Sometimes we confuse comfort with complacency, familiarity with fading sparks. But love, true love, is not a finish line. It is a garden, tended not once, but again and again. A daily choice, a quiet vow, a reintroduction. You once dressed with care just to see their eyes light up. You asked them questions like their soul was a map. You held their hand in the rain and found poetry in silence. What if that wasn't just the beginning, but the way? To date is not to perform. It is to remain curious, to ask, who are you becoming? And listen like it's the first time. It's in the coffee made before they wake, the shared playlist for a late-night drive, the texts that say, thinking of you, even when you're across the room. You change. They change. And so must the love. So don't let routine write your romance in dust. Don't let busy days crowd out wonder. Don't assume they know. Tell them again. Whisper admiration as if it's sacred. Because it is. This is the soft rule of love's longevity. Never stop dating the soul you chose. Not because you need to win them back, but because they're still worth discovering. Now let's move on to the next chapter. Arguments aren't battles to win. In the heat of hurt, we often forget we are on the same side. An argument begins. A raised voice, a furrowed brow, words sharpened by old wounds. And somewhere between what was said and what was felt, love begins to armor up, not to protect, but to attack. But here is the quiet truth, hidden beneath the noise. When you fight to win, you risk losing the very thing worth protecting. Arguments aren't battles to be won. They are bridges to be rebuilt. They are mirrors showing us what still aches, what longs to be seen, what feels unheard. When you speak, ask yourself, do I want to be right? Or do I want to be close? Winning proves a point, but connection proves you care. And connection can't bloom in the aftermath of ego. It grows in gentleness, in saying, help me understand, instead of, you always. There is bravery in softening, in pausing to breathe, in choosing silence long enough to let love remember what it values more. The person across from you, not the scoreboard in your mind. You can hold your ground without raising your voice. You can speak your truth without burning theirs. The goal isn't to silence disagreement, but to hold space for it, to listen as if they're still your favorite sound. So when the storm comes, let your words be shelter. Let your tone be kind. Let your heart be bigger than your pride. Because in love, the real victory is when you both feel safe again. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Love grows when you listen. Love is not always found in grand confessions, or in the heat of passion, or the sweet echo of I love you before sleep. Sometimes it grows in the quietest corners, when one heart leans in and truly hears the other. To listen, not just hear, is to open a door into someone's world, their memories, their meanings, their moments they've never dared to speak aloud. And when you step into that space gently, you water something sacred. Too often we listen to respond. We prepare our rebuttal, our advice, our yes, but, while their soul is still unfolding. But love asks more of us. It asks us to be still, to hold their story like a fragile flame and keep it from going out. Sometimes they're not asking you to fix anything. They just want to feel seen. To say, this hurt, and know you won't rush past it. To confess a fear and trust you won't make it about you. To wonder aloud and find a safe place to land. When you listen with your eyes, with your breath, with the stillness between your words, you become their sanctuary. You show them they matter. You teach them that their inner world is welcome. Love grows not because we always agree, not because we always know what to say, but because we stay present, especially when it's hard. So the next time they speak, listen not just with your ears, but with your heart wide open. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Don't expect them to read your mind. There's a quiet yearning many of us carry. To be known without having to speak. To be understood without having to explain. To be felt the way we feel others. Instinctively, immediately, like a song you've never heard but somehow remember. But even the ones who love you most are not mind readers. They cannot guess the storms behind your silence or decode the meaning behind your sighs. They can't know what you needed them to say unless you say it. We sometimes believe that love should be effortless, that if they really knew us, we wouldn't have to ask. But communication is not a flaw in intimacy. It's the foundation of it. They may not know that you needed comfort instead of advice, that your quietness wasn't peace, it was pain, that your "I'm fine" was a test, one they didn't even know they were taking. So speak, softly if you must, clumsily if it's all you can manage. But speak. Tell them what hurts. Tell them what helps. Tell them where you feel unseen. Because when you don't say it, you leave space for stories, and the mind fills that silence with doubt. She doesn't care. He's distant. I'm not enough. But none of that may be true, and they too might be waiting for a sign. So let love be a bridge, not a guessing game. Give them the map to find you, not because they failed, but because you finally opened the door. And when you speak your truth, you invite them into it. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Small gestures mean everything. We often chase the grand gestures, the handwritten letters, the moonlit surprises, the once-in-a-lifetime confessions. And while those moments glisten in memory, it is the quiet, repeated kindnesses that carry a relationship through time. Love, real love, is less about fireworks and more about the steady warmth of a candle. It's the blanket pulled over you in the middle of the night. It's the tea made the way you like it. It's the door held open when your hands and heart are full. Small gestures, they whisper, "I see you. I remember you. I cherish you in the rhythm of my day." You don't need an occasion to show someone they matter. You just need intention. The way you look at them when they don't notice. The way you check in when the world feels too loud. The way you say their name like it's home. You see, it's not just the act. It's the presence inside it. The fact that someone chose to think of you in the middle of their messy, ordinary life. And when those small gestures accumulate, they build a world where love feels like safety, like belonging, like breath. It is easy to say "I love you," but it is in the forgotten moments, the dish washed, the hand held, the soft glance, where love is proven again and again. So do the small things. Do them with heart. Because in the end, those are the moments they'll remember when the rest fades. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Your partner isn't your therapist. There is a sacred beauty in being vulnerable. To rest your weary thoughts in the arms of someone you trust. To say, without fear or shame, "I'm struggling. Can you hold this with me for a while?" And yes, love is meant to be a soft landing, a place to exhale, a home for the pieces of you that feel too heavy to carry alone. But even love, even the deepest, most committed love, has its boundaries. Your partner can hold space, but they cannot hold everything. They are not the architect of your healing. They are not the keeper of your every storm. They are not trained to untangle the trauma lodged in your bones, the fear in your breath, the echoes of your childhood pain. When you turn your partner into your sole source of emotional processing, you risk shifting the weight of your healing onto someone who was never built to carry it. They can listen. They can comfort. They can love you through your unraveling. But they cannot be your therapist, because they are human too. And while they're holding you, they're also holding themselves. This boundary is not about distance. It's about safety. For you, for them, for the relationship you both want to protect. True love says, I will walk beside you, but I cannot walk for you. It says, I believe in your strength to seek help, and I will still be here when you return from the deep. Therapy is not a betrayal of love. It is an extension of it. Because when you care for your mind, you care for the one who loves it too. Let them be your comfort, not your cure. Let them be your home, not your healing plan. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Physical touch matters. Before there were words, before language was built, we spoke in touch. A hand wrapped around a newborn's fist, a mother's embrace, a gentle nudge of reassurance. Long before I love you was spoken, it was felt through the skin. And in relationships, that primal language still lives. It whispers through fingertips, rests in lingering hugs, breathes through soft kisses on tired foreheads. Touch is not just physical. It is emotional oxygen. We forget sometimes, especially in long-term love, how much connection lives in the little things. A hand resting on the small of the back, fingers brushing beneath the table, a thigh leaned against yours in shared silence. We imagine touch as intimacy's grand finale, something reserved for passion. But often, it is the quiet touches that mean the most, the ones with no agenda, no expectation, only presence. Touch says, I see you. I'm here. I remember the shape of your sadness, and I will sit with you through it. And when distance creeps in, not the physical kind, but the emotional, touch can build a bridge. You don't always need the perfect words. Sometimes you just need to reach, to hold their hand like it's the only thing grounding you two now. Touch can calm a storm. It can soften a fight. It can remind you both that underneath the noise, there is still tenderness waiting to be invited back in. Don't underestimate its power. Don't forget its simplicity. Because love, at its most ancient and human, still speaks through skin. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Say I love you. Even on bad days. It's easy to say I love you when everything is soft, when laughter fills the room, when the sun kisses your skin, when your hearts beat in rhythm like an old familiar song. But love isn't just made for the light. It is most needed in the dark. In the days when silence stretches too long between you. In the nights when exhaustion makes your words sharp. In the moments when everything feels off, and you wonder if you're drifting. Love whispered during joy is celebration. But love spoken during struggle, that is salvation. Say, I love you when the dishes pile up, when tempers are frayed, when the distance feels bigger than the room you're in. Say it not to fix everything, but to remind each other that the foundation still holds, that even when the surface shakes, what lies beneath remains steady. I love you is not a reward. It is not something withheld until everything is perfect. It is a lifeline, a thread you both hold onto when you forget how to be gentle. Say it when you feel it the least, because that's often when it needs to be heard the most. You don't have to smile when you say it. It doesn't have to come dressed in romance. It can be tired, honest, a little cracked, but still true. And every time you say it in the middle of the storm, You teach your love how to weather anything. Because love isn't just for the good days. It's what helps carry you through the bad ones. Now let's move on to the next chapter. Apologize without but. There's a quiet kind of courage in saying, I hurt you. I see that. I'm sorry. Just that. No explanation, no justification, no, but I didn't mean to, or, but you misunderstood me, or, but you did it too. A true apology stands alone. It doesn't wear armor. It doesn't come to defend itself. It comes to kneel, to make space for pain, to acknowledge harm, to invite healing. So many apologies are hidden negotiations. We want to be forgiven without feeling the weight of our impact. We want to smooth things over without slowing down long enough to see the cracks we caused. But when we add but to the end of I'm sorry, what we really say is, my reasons matter more than your hurt. And love cannot grow in a garden where defensiveness overshadows empathy. To apologize without but is to surrender control. It's to let the other person feel without interruption. To say, your pain is real, and I won't try to rewrite it. And in that silence, that space where the ego steps aside, something begins to mend. A door opens, a hand is offered, a little trust returns. You don't need to be perfect to be loved, but you do need to be accountable. Not just once, but every time you misstep. So the next time you're tempted to soften your apology with reasons, pause, take a breath, and simply say, I'm sorry I hurt you. That matters to me. And let that be enough. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Fight fair, not to hurt. Conflict is inevitable, a natural tremor in the shared space of two hearts. It arrives not to break, but to reveal. To uncover the places where needs were missed, where expectations weren't voiced, where feelings were quietly waiting to be named. But in those heated moments, we often forget. We are not opponents. We are not enemies on opposing sides. We are two people trying to stay connected while navigating pain. To fight fair is to remember that the goal is not victory. It is understanding. It is connection. It is healing what's been bruised without bruising each other further. You can be angry and still be kind. You can be hurt and still be responsible with your words. You can speak your truth without slicing theirs apart. Fighting fair means choosing your tone as carefully as your thoughts. It means pausing when your mouth is faster than your mind. It means not reaching for the low-hanging insults just because they're easy to grab. It means no scorecards, no silent punishments, no slamming doors, literal or emotional. It's saying, I'm upset, but I still love you. I'm confused, but I want to understand. I need space, but I'm not abandoning us. When the fire rises, let your love be the water. Cool it with patience. Soften it with presence. Because a relationship is not something you win. It's something you tend to. And fair fights grow strong roots. Roots that hold you steady even in the storm. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Share silences without awkwardness. There is a special kind of intimacy in a shared silence that doesn't need to be filled. No scrambling for words, no forced laughter, no pressure to entertain or explain. Just two souls, breathing beside one another, letting the quiet be enough. In the beginning, silence can feel like a void, a space we rush to patch with conversation, with questions, with noise, because we mistake stillness for distance. But over time, with trust, silence becomes a sanctuary. To share a silence without awkwardness is to say, I am at ease with you. I don't need to perform here. I can rest. It's the car ride where no one talks, but the air is full of presence. It's sitting on the couch, reading separate books, yet feeling more connected than during hours of chatter. Some of the deepest love lives in the space between words. Because silence, when safe, is not emptiness. It's communion. It's the comfort of knowing that your value is not measured by how interesting you sound, or how funny you are, or how quickly you respond. It's knowing you can be tired, quiet, off-center, and still be welcome. If you can share silences the way others share stories, you've built something rare. A bond not built on constant stimulation, but on stillness, on trust, on the gentle knowing that presence is enough. Let there be moments where nothing is said, and yet everything is understood. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Grow together, not apart. Love does not stand still. It moves, slowly, quietly, sometimes in opposite directions. People evolve, dreams shift, needs deepen or unravel, and every relationship is faced with the same question. Will we grow, or will we grow apart? It's easy to fall in love with who someone was. The version of them you first met, uncomplicated, exciting, predictable in their surprises. But love asks for more than nostalgia. It asks for presence. It asks for curiosity about the version of them they are becoming. To grow together is to keep meeting each other in new seasons. To ask again, what matters most to you now? What scares you these days? What are you reaching for when I'm not looking? Growing together means you make space, not just for their changes, but for your own. You support their evolution without feeling threatened. You allow them to explore without assuming it means they're leaving. Sometimes, love stretches. It gets uncomfortable. It asks you to release old patterns to make room for something wiser, something deeper. This doesn't mean losing yourself. It means choosing to rise in parallel. To check in when paths start to diverge. To say, I want to understand this new version of you because I still choose you. Grow together by learning new things side by side. Start projects. Share books. Talk about ideas, not just errands. Dream together like you did in the beginning. But this time, with roots beneath your feet. Because relationships are like trees. They must grow upward and outward at the same time. If you're not growing together, you may already be growing apart. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Keep surprising. Each other routine is warm. It's safe. It's the rhythm of shared mornings, grocery lists, and inside jokes whispered across years. But even the most tender routines can become quiet prisons if we forget how to awaken wonder. In the early days, everything feels like a surprise. The way they laugh, the stories they tell, the small, specific things that make them come alive. But time smooths those edges. We begin to assume. We begin to predict. And slowly, we stop looking deeper. But here's the truth. They are still becoming, still blooming in ways you haven't seen yet. And so are you. To keep surprising each other is to stay curious, to remember that mystery isn't lost. It's simply waiting beneath the familiar. It doesn't take grand gestures. It takes intention. Write a note and leave it in their bag. Learn something new just to share it with them. Take them somewhere they've never been, even if it's just a different cafe on a rainy afternoon. Tell them something you've never said aloud. A memory, a hope, a dream you once hid under your tongue. Not because it will change everything, but because it adds a spark to the quiet. Surprise them by remembering, by noticing the details they thought no one saw, by being playful when life feels too serious, by laughing in the middle of dishes or dancing in the hallway without music. Keep surprising each other, not because love is fading, but because love, real love, craves renewal. Let wonder return in small, honest waves. and watch how it wakes the relationship from its deepest sleep. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Don't compare to others' relationships. Comparison is a quiet thief. It tiptoes in through scrolls and stories, through curated smiles, through highlight reels dressed up as reality. It shows you a filtered love, polished, glowing, untouched by doubt. And whispers, "Why doesn't yours look like that?" But love is not a performance. It is not meant to be measured by anniversary captions or perfectly posed vacation photos. It is messy. It is real. It is sometimes silent, sometimes stormy, often ordinary, and still extraordinary in its own way. When you compare, you forget the sacredness of what you have. The private language only you and your partner speak. The battles you've survived. The late-night talks that mended what almost broke. The way they know how to hold you when you can't explain what's wrong. No one posts their misunderstandings. No one shares the days when they feel distant. You see the laughter, but not the arguments that preceded it. You see the rings, but not the nights spent questioning the future. Every love story is written in a different script. What works for them may not nourish you. What they show may not reflect what they truly feel. So when you feel doubt creeping in, return to your own connection. Ask not what others are doing, but what your love needs to feel whole. Turn comparison into curiosity, into gratitude, into presence. Because the only relationship worth measuring is the one you're still choosing every single day, in all its imperfect beauty. And that quiet, unseen love, the one you build together when no one's watching, is more than enough. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Be their safe space. Love isn't just about chemistry or shared interests, or even the way your laughter sounds together in the quiet. At its deepest, love is about safety, about being the place someone can come home to without fear of judgment, without needing to earn comfort, without performing. To be their safe space is to be the arms they fall into when the world feels too loud. It's being the one who doesn't flinch when they share their shadow side. It's knowing how to hold the storm without trying to fix it. Everyone longs to be safe somewhere. And when that somewhere is you, when they look into your eyes and see sanctuary, you've built something rare. It means listening even when the words are messy. It means holding space even when you don't fully understand. It means saying, "I'm not going anywhere," especially when they expect you to leave. It's protecting their vulnerabilities, not using them in future fights. It's honoring their fears instead of dismissing them. It's letting them unravel without rushing to neat in the threads. Safety isn't silence. It's not walking on eggshells. It's not avoiding truth. It's honesty delivered with kindness. It's accountability wrapped in care. It's the soft landing after a hard day. And when you become someone's safe space, you give them the freedom to grow, to soften, to breathe. You allow them to be more fully themselves. And in return, they'll trust you with the parts of them they've never shown the world. Be the place where their soul rests, where their guard drops, where their truth feels held. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Say what you mean. Kindly words are bridges. They can carry truth across the space between two hearts. Or they can collapse under the weight of sharpness, leaving silence where love used to live. Saying what you mean does not mean being brutal. Honesty is not the same as cruelty. And truth, when wrapped in tenderness, can be both transformative and safe. Sometimes we believe that being real means being raw, unedited, unfiltered, unkind. But love doesn't need jagged edges to be authentic. It needs courage, yes, but it also needs compassion. To say what you mean kindly is to speak with both clarity and care. To be direct without being dismissive. To express your boundaries without building walls. To say, I need more from you, instead of, you never show up. It's asking, can we talk about this, instead of accusing, what's wrong with you? Kindness is not weakness. It is strength dressed in softness. It is choosing words that carry your meaning without wounding the listener. Because how you say something matters just as much as what you say. Tone is memory. And people don't just remember the message, they remember how it made them feel. In love, communication is not just about expression. It's about connection. It's about making sure the words don't just reach their ears. They reach their heart. So speak up. Say the hard things. Don't bury your truth, but offer it with open hands, not pointed fingers. When you speak with both honesty and kindness, you create a space where growth can happen without fear. And that is how love learns to listen. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Never use their insecurities as weapons. In every person you love, there are quiet places, tender wounds, old echoes of doubt, shadows cast by childhood whispers, former heartbreaks, and the ache of not enough. And when they hand you those insecurities, nervously, slowly, it's not just a confession, it's a sacred offering. A quiet, trembling trust that says, here's the part of me I usually hide. Will you still love me if you see this too? To use those places as weapons, especially in anger, is to betray that trust, even once, even a single time. Because those wounds don't just reopen, they remember. They remember the time you said too much, the time you went for the weak spot, the time you didn't fight fair but fought to hurt. It's easy to lash out when we're frustrated, to reach for the sharpest thing closest to hand. But nothing you win in that moment will last, because even if you're right, you'll have broken something deeper, something harder to repair than the original conflict. Love must be the safest place for someone's insecurity to breathe, not to be fixed, not to be judged, just to be seen and accepted. So when you're tempted to speak the thing you know will sting, pause, breathe, remember. You are not their enemy. You are their sanctuary, their soft place to land. Honor what they've shared in vulnerability. Even in anger, even in disappointment, especially then. Because the deepest love doesn't protect itself with power. It protects the other with gentleness. And in doing so, it becomes the kind of love that never has to raise its voice to be heard. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Prioritize time together. Time is the most intimate language of love. Not grand gestures, not the rush of chemistry, but presence, real, undistracted, undivided presence. In the quiet spaces between busy schedules, beneath the noise of phones and deadlines, a relationship either deepens or dissolves. And the difference is often just time. Not just being in the same room, but being truly with one another. Looking into their eyes, not over their shoulder. Asking, how are you really? And waiting for the full answer. Not rushing through dinner, but lingering. Letting the moment stretch out and settle into memory. When life pulls you in different directions, when careers are loud and stress is a constant guest, time together can become the first thing to slip. But love that is not fed will quietly begin to starve. Prioritizing time isn't about how much, but how meaningful. 15 minutes of true connection can soothe more than hours of distracted coexistence. Make time a ritual. Carve it like stone into the calendar, even if it's just a walk around the block, a shared tea in silence, a slow dance in the kitchen when no one is watching. You don't have to fit them in. You choose them. Over the scroll, over the noise, over the world's constant demands. Because presence is where intimacy lives. And when you protect your time together, you protect your connection. Let time be love's soft shelter, a daily returning, a quiet vow that says, you still matter, even now, especially now. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Don't let ego lead. Ego is loud. It speaks in ultimatums, clings to being right, and fears the quiet where truth might echo. In relationships, ego wears many masks: pride, defensiveness, control, the unwillingness to say, I'm sorry, even when the silence is breaking you both. But love, real, enduring, nourishing love, cannot be built on ego's throne. Because ego protects the self, while love protects the we. Ego wants to win the argument. Love wants to win each other back. Ego keeps score. Love forgives the unintentional. Ego says, they should come to me. Love whispers, I'll meet them halfway, even if it's hard. And yet, ego is seductive. It convinces you that vulnerability is weakness, that to bend is to break, that if you give too much, you'll be left with nothing. But this is illusion. The truth is, when you soften, you don't lose yourself. You find the strength that ego hides from you. You find the courage to say, my love for you is greater than my need to win. And still, you are not small. You are not foolish for choosing peace. You are not weak for choosing softness. You are not lesser for choosing the relationship over your moment of power. Let love lead instead. Love that listens before it reacts. Love that holds space for misunderstanding without letting it poison the whole. Love that says, I see my ego rising, but I won't let it drive. When ego steps back, love steps forward. And in that sacred pause, you find each other again. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Forgive fully or don't claim forgiveness. Forgiveness is not a sentence spoken. It's a decision lived, again and again and again. To forgive is not to forget. It's not erasure. It's not pretending the hurt never happened. It's choosing, despite the memory, to move forward without using that pain as a weapon. So often we say, it's okay, I forgive you, because the silence feels heavy, or because love asks us to make peace. But beneath our words, resentment whispers, waiting for the next fight to bring the past crashing back in. That's not forgiveness. That's a pause button on blame. True forgiveness is deeper than that. It means not bringing it up just to win the next argument. It means not weaving the old wound into every new disagreement. It means saying, I'm still healing, but I no longer need to punish you to feel safe. It's not about letting someone off the hook. It's about releasing yourself from the burden of holding the hook so tightly. Forgiveness, real forgiveness, is an offering. Not just to the one who hurt you, but to your own heart. And if you're not ready, that's okay too. You don't have to perform peace. You don't have to rush the softening. But don't call it forgiveness until you can lay down the sword and truly mean, I am no longer keeping score. To forgive fully is to free both of you. It is the quiet, patient work of building trust again, not because the past is gone, but because love is bigger than what broke. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. You teach people how to treat you. Every interaction is a lesson, a gentle signal, a quiet message that says, this is what I allow. This is what I welcome. This is what I will walk away from. You may not realize it, but with each boundary you set or fail to set, you are teaching others how to hold you. People don't read minds. They read patterns. They learn from your silences, your hesitations, your forgiveness without change, your presence after pain. If you let someone cross the line repeatedly, they will start to believe there is no line. If you speak gently but act contrary, they will trust the action, not the word. And if you stay when your soul is shrinking, they may never know they're hurting you. But there is another way, a clearer way, a softer, stronger way. You teach people how to treat you by showing them how you treat yourself. With respect, with rest, with the refusal to shrink or apologize for your own needs. You teach them that love does not mean disappearing into someone else. You show them that kindness has limits, that compassion doesn't mean compliance. And when they learn, truly learn, they will rise to meet you, or they will fall away. Either way, you've honored yourself. Because the way you allow others to speak to you, touch you, hold your time, and enter your heart becomes the blueprint for every future moment of love. So teach with love. Teach with clarity. And never forget, you are the first student of your own worth. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Saying no is a complete sentence number. 2 letters, 1 breath, a boundary wrapped in silence, a sacred self-preservation spoken without apology. Saying no isn't rejection. It's not unkindness. It's not cruelty wrapped in coldness. It's truth. It's clarity. It's the gentle reminder that you too have needs, limits, and lines, not meant to be crossed. So many of us were taught to pad our no in softness, to explain, to justify, to make sure the other person still feels good while we crumble a little inside. But you don't owe explanations for your healing. You don't need long essays for why you won't attend or help or stay silent. No is not a wall. It's a doorway back to yourself. When you say no, you say yes to your energy. You say yes to your peace. You say yes to what your body whispers when your mind is too polite to listen. And those who truly love you, they won't require an apology for your self-respect. They will honor your no as they hope you'll honor theirs. You are not rude for protecting your capacity. You are not distant for choosing rest. You are not selfish for no longer carrying what was never yours. Your no can be full of love, full of calm, and still be firm. So let it stand tall, without fear, without guilt, without the need to dress it up in pleasantries. Just no, spoken from truth, echoing with power, a sentence complete in its wholeness, and beautiful in its quiet finality. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Take yourself on solo dates. There is something quietly magical about sitting alone at a cafe, hands wrapped around a warm drink, no one to entertain but your own soul. No one to impress, no expectations, no plans, just presence. We often wait to be chosen, wait for someone else to bring the flowers, to light the candles, to make the evening feel special. But what if you didn't wait? What if you became the love you're hoping someone else will be? Taking yourself on solo dates isn't about loneliness. It's about reverence. Reverence for your own company, for the strange and beautiful rhythm of your thoughts when no one's watching, for the way you breathe deeper when you realize there's no one to perform for. You begin to notice things, the sound of spoons clinking on plates, the way the sunlight breaks through the trees, the music playing faintly in the background, and the steady, grounding pulse of being okay, just as you are. Take yourself to the bookstore, to the ocean, to a quiet dinner with a candle lit just for you. Buy yourself flowers, write yourself letters, laugh out loud at something only you heard in your head. These aren't acts of indulgence. They're declarations. that you are worthy of romance even without a witness, that your soul is worth your time, that love begins not with finding the right person, but with becoming someone you love to be alone with. And the more you enjoy your own company, the less you'll chase people who can't meet you there. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Don't lose yourself in love. Love is soft. It's surrender. It's entanglement. It's two hands reaching for the same mystery. But even in the deepest intimacy, you are still you. Still a soul with your own dreams, still a body that moves to its own rhythm, still a mind that needs space to wander. Love should never require you to disappear. And yet, so many do. They fold themselves smaller, quieter, more agreeable. They dim their brightness so someone else can shine. They forget what they liked, what they believed in, what their laughter sounded like when they were alone. This is not romance. This is erasure. In healthy love, you do not become each other. You become more of yourselves. You should be able to love fully without giving away your name, without giving up the parts of you that existed before they came. Your creativity, your curiosity, your friendships, your rituals, your weird, wonderful quirks. When love asks you to vanish, to shrink, to bend beyond your shape, that is not love. That is control wrapped in longing. Real love celebrates your wholeness. It cheers for your independence, not just your devotion. And when you both stay rooted in who you are, your togetherness becomes not a prison, but a garden, where two wild things grow side by side, each fully alive, each fully seen. So keep dancing your own dance. Even while holding their hand, don't vanish into someone else's light. Be the flame beside them, whole, burning, beautiful. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. You're allowed to outgrow people. Not all departures come with anger. Sometimes, growth is the only goodbye. There will be people in your life who once felt like home. Their laughter, their voice, their presence, once wrapped around your heart like comfort, like belonging. But time is not still, and neither are you. As you evolve, your values shift, your questions deepen, your boundaries form. And sometimes, you look across the room and realize the connection no longer fits the person you've become. It doesn't mean you're ungrateful. It doesn't mean the love was false. It means you're honoring your truth more than your history. Some bonds were built for who you were, not for who you're becoming. And that's okay. You don't have to stay in friendships that drain you, relationships that stunt you, or circles that no longer see you. Loyalty is a beautiful thing, but not when it costs your growth. You're allowed to love people from a distance, to wish them well without walking beside them, to hold the memories but release the present. This isn't failure. This is maturity. You're not a traitor for choosing your evolution. You're a garden that has outgrown its pot. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do, for both of you, is to step into new soil and let each of you find the sun on your own terms. So go gently, but go. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Heal before you attach, before you intertwine your life with another, before you offer your heart as a home for someone else's pain. Pause. Breathe. Turn inward. Because love, when built on unhealed wounds, becomes a search for rescue, not connection. It becomes a plea for validation, a reach for wholeness outside yourself, a longing to be filled by someone who was never meant to carry your broken pieces. We all carry scars, stories that shaped us, moments we never fully spoke aloud. But if you hand those wounds to another before you've tended to them, they will bleed into the bond. Every argument will echo with old ghosts. Every silence will feel like abandonment. Every need unmet will reopen past pain that had nothing to do with this person, this moment, this love. Healing doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean erasing every ache or arriving with your soul wrapped in neat little ribbons. It means knowing your pain well enough to not weaponize it. It means holding your own loneliness without demanding someone else soothe it away. It means walking into love not as a half, but as a whole, capable of giving and receiving without losing yourself in either. When you heal before you attach, you give love a chance to breathe freely, to grow without pressure, to stand on its own legs, not lean like a crutch. You stop choosing people who mirror your damage and start choosing people who reflect your growth. You no longer look for someone to fix it. You look for someone to walk beside it. And suddenly, love isn't chaos. It's calm, not the kind that numbs, but the kind that steadies. So take your time. You're worth the wait. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. You don't have to fix anyone. You are not a repair shop for broken hearts. You are not a therapist for every person who refuses to meet their own wounds. You are not the glue that must hold everyone together. You are love, not labor. There is a difference between holding space and losing yourself in someone else's chaos, between compassion and self-sacrifice. You can care deeply for someone and still understand that their healing is not your burden to carry. You can sit beside their pain, offer comfort, offer presence, offer truth. But you cannot do their inner work for them. Trying to fix someone is like watering a seed buried in someone else's soil. You can pour and pour, but if the seed isn't ready, nothing will grow. And soon, you'll run dry. We often mistake love for salvation. We think, if I just love them enough, they'll change. They'll soften. They'll rise. But love isn't meant to be a rescue mission. Love is meant to be a meeting place, where two whole people choose to grow side by side, not in spite of one another. You are not selfish for stepping back. You are not heartless for choosing peace. You are wise for knowing where your power ends. Because real love doesn't drain. It doesn't require martyrdom. It doesn't ask you to trade your light for their comfort. Let them find their own path. Let them learn their own lessons. Let them heal in their own time. And in the meantime, keep growing in your own garden, without guilt, without fear, without apology. Now let's move on to the next chapter. Trust your gut every time. There is a voice inside you, soft, persistent, ancient. It doesn't shout. It doesn't rationalize. It simply knows. Your gut is not a guess. It is the quiet wisdom of every experience your soul has ever carried. It's the instinct that speaks before your mind interferes, before your heart makes excuses, before your fear paints red flags white. How many times have you looked back and whispered, I knew? You knew when something felt off, when the tone didn't match the words, when the apology felt hollow, when your energy dimmed in their presence. You knew. But maybe you doubted, because they seemed kind, because you didn't want to be too sensitive, because logic told you to stay, because your loneliness dressed up as patience. But your body never lies. It tenses. It tightens. It grows quiet when something isn't right. It sends signals, not to scare you, but to guide you, to remind you that safety isn't just physical. It's emotional. It's energetic. It's spiritual. And when you learn to trust your gut, you stop needing proof to walk away. You stop waiting for the fallout before you choose peace. You stop explaining what your spirit understands long before your mind catches up. You are not difficult for having boundaries. You are not paranoid for sensing the unseen. You are not cold for choosing to protect your peace. You are wise. You are intuitive. You are remembering what you've always known, that your inner voice is not your enemy. It is your compass, and it will never lead you where love isn't. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Respect your own time. Time is the most silent teacher you'll ever meet. It never rushes, never rewinds, never begs for attention. It just keeps moving. Quietly, surely, carving the shape of your life in moments both loud and still. And yet, we give our time away as if it were endless. We fill our days with obligations we don't mean, conversations that leave us hollow, commitments that don't align with who we are becoming. We spend hours explaining ourselves to people who aren't listening, or staying in spaces that no longer feel safe. All because we forget that time is not guaranteed. It's gifted. Every minute you spend is a seed you plant, and you deserve to choose what grows. Respecting your own time is an act of quiet rebellion in a world that romanticizes busyness. It's saying no when yes would cost you peace. It's choosing stillness over urgency, depth over distraction. It's realizing that your energy was never meant to be scattered everywhere. It was meant to be sacred. When you protect your time, you protect your future. You say to yourself, I matter. My presence is valuable. Not everyone gets a piece of me. Let people earn your time through consistency, kindness, and care. Let your hours reflect your heart. Let your calendar feel like a mirror, not a cage. You were not born to be busy. You were born to be full. So choose wisely. Live slowly. And remember, wasting your time is wasting your life. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Choose peace over pleasing. There's a moment, quiet but sharp, when you realize that being liked by everyone is not worth being at war with yourself. People-pleasing wears a mask of kindness, but beneath it, there's a silent ache. A fear of rejection, a hunger for approval, a belief that love must be earned through self-erasure. How many times have you said yes when your body whispered no? How many times have you smiled through clenched teeth, offered your time, your energy, your presence, just to avoid the sting of disapproval? And yet, the cost builds quietly. You begin to feel stretched thin, resentful, invisible even to yourself. Because in trying to be everything for everyone, you forget how to simply be you. But peace, real peace, is born when you choose authenticity over approval. When you let go of the need to be palatable and instead become truthful. Gentle, yes, but grounded. You are not here to carry everyone's comfort. You are not here to shrink yourself for their ease. You are not here to be understood by all. You are here to live honestly, to rest deeply, to give from overflow, not depletion. Choosing peace over pleasing isn't cold, it's kind. It says, I love you enough to be real, and I love myself enough to not abandon who I am. You'll lose some people, but you'll find yourself. And in the stillness of that rediscovery, you'll remember, you were never meant to be everything to everyone. You were meant to be at home in yourself. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Real friends don't compete. In true friendship, there is no scoreboard, no silent race, no secret need to be ahead. Because real friends, the kind that feel like sunlight after rain, aren't threatened by your shine. They don't flinch at your success, don't shrink when you grow, don't quietly celebrate your setbacks as if they're proof of their own worth. In real friendship, there is space for both of you to rise. But sometimes, we're taught to believe that closeness means comparison, that we must measure ourselves against those beside us, that there's only room for one dream, one voice, one star. This mindset breeds quiet resentment, compliments laced with envy, support that feels heavy, conditional. And slowly, the bond begins to crack. Not from cruelty, but from scarcity. Real friends believe in abundance. They know your light doesn't dim theirs. They clap the loudest when it's your turn, because they trust their moment will come too. They don't need to outshine you. They're just happy standing beside you, both of you lit up in your own ways. And when you stumble, they don't secretly feel taller. They reach down. They say, "I've got you." Because your fall is not their rise. Your win is not their loss. Friendship is not a mirror. It's a garden. And in the soil of mutual love, both of you can bloom, side by side, without needing to be the tallest. So celebrate your friends loudly. Let their victories feel like yours. That's how you know you're in the presence of real love. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Loyalty doesn't mean blind agreement. Loyalty is not silence. It's not nodding along when your heart disagrees. It's not biting your tongue to avoid discomfort. And it's certainly not betraying yourself in the name of keeping peace. Real loyalty, the kind that grows roots, doesn't demand blind agreement. It invites honesty. It creates space for differences. It says, "I see you. I care for you. And I will not abandon the truth, even if it's uncomfortable to speak it." We often confuse loyalty with obedience, as if standing by someone means losing our own spine. But love that cannot hold disagreement is not love. It's control. A loyal friend, partner, or family member doesn't always agree with you, but they always respect you. They hold up a mirror, not a mask. They challenge you with kindness, not contempt. They don't abandon you when you're wrong. But they also don't pretend you're right just to keep things easy. Blind loyalty leads to quiet resentment, to relationships built on performance, not presence, to harmony that feels hollow. But conscious loyalty, that's sacred. It means showing up, not just when it's convenient, but when it's necessary. It means having the hard conversations and trusting the bond is strong enough to hold the weight of truth. It means knowing that love isn't about sameness. It's about seeing someone fully and standing with them, even when your perspectives stretch apart. So be loyal to others, yes, but be loyal to your voice too. Because any connection that asks you to silence yourself is not a home. It's a cage. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Show up when it's inconvenient love. In its truest form, doesn't only arrive when it's easy. It doesn't just knock when the sun is out and the calendar is clear. It shows up. Even when the timing is messy, even when it's late, even when everything else says, "not now." Because showing up when it's convenient is simple. It's scheduled. It fits neatly into our lives. But showing up when it's hard, that's sacred. That's the difference between presence and performance. It's answering a 2 a.m. call you didn't expect. It's rearranging a day to sit with someone in silence. It's choosing discomfort because someone you love is carrying more than they should. And it's not about grand gestures. Sometimes, the most meaningful acts are small. A check-in text, a steady hand, a voice that says, "I'm here. You don't have to go through this alone." Inconvenient love asks something deeper of us. It asks us to pause our world for someone else's. It asks us to listen, to hold space, to care even when it costs us time, energy, or ease. And in that space, connection deepens. Because when someone sees that you came not just when it was simple, but when it wasn't, that's when trust roots in. We all want to be loved when we're glowing, but we need to be loved when we're breaking. So be the one who shows up, not because it's convenient, but because you care. That's the kind of love that stays. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Don't keep score. Love is not a ledger. Friendship is not a contract. And connection, the real kind, doesn't grow from calculation. It blooms from care. But somewhere along the way, we start counting. I did this for you. I showed up last time. I waited, I gave, I bent. And slowly, without meaning to, we begin to tally. Who's giving more? Who's doing less? Who owes what? Keeping score feels like control, a way to measure fairness, to protect our hearts from being taken for granted. But what it really creates is distance, a quiet resentment that grows with every unchecked box. Because the moment we serve just to be served back, we've lost the soul of giving. The moment love becomes a transaction, it stops being love. It becomes business. There is no peace in measuring every move, no warmth in reminding others of what they owe, no joy in love that feels like a test. True connection thrives when we give freely and communicate honestly. When we speak up, not with bitterness, but with clarity. I need help. I'm feeling unseen. I'd like to feel more supported. That is how balance is built, not through silent scorekeeping, but through open-hearted dialogue. Yes, reciprocity matters. Yes, mutual care is vital. But the kind of love that lasts isn't obsessed with counting. It's invested in understanding. So let go of the scoreboard. Trust the rhythm of real relationship. One that flows back and forth, not from obligation, but from shared presence. You are not a banker of emotional debts. You are a soul seeking connection. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Celebrate their wins like your own. There's a quiet magic in celebrating someone else's joy as if it were your own heartbeat. Not out of duty, not because you're supposed to, but because something inside you genuinely rises when they rise. In a world wired for comparison, where someone else's win can feel like your loss, this kind of celebration is rare. And yet, it's one of the truest marks of deep connection. To smile, not out of politeness, but with the full weight of pride. To shout their success into the sky, even if your own journey feels slow. To feel joy when they feel seen, not jealousy. That is love in motion. It's easy to celebrate when you're also shining. Harder when you're in a season of waiting or hurting, or wondering when your time will come. But when you love someone, you don't measure their joy against your silence. You let their moment be radiant, not dimmed by your shadows. Because in true connection, their victory expands the circle. Their rising lifts you too, even if in invisible ways. And the more you celebrate freely, the more you become a person who others feel safe to shine around. Celebrate their promotions, their healing, their quiet breakthroughs. Dance when they land the dream. Cry when they find peace. Cheer when they come home to themselves. You are not in competition. You are companions on different paths beneath the same sky. And when one flower blooms, the whole garden brightens. So clap for them, loudly, generously, and know your time is coming too. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Be honest, not brutal. Honesty is a gift, not a weapon. Yet sometimes, in the name of just being real, we forget that truth and tenderness can walk hand in hand. You see, there's a difference between honesty and harm, between saying what's true and saying it in a way that builds rather than breaks. We've been told that honesty means rawness, that it must cut to prove it's real. But that's not honesty. That's aggression in disguise. Real honesty speaks with care. It understands timing. It considers tone. It asks, will my truth help us grow or just leave wounds behind? Being honest doesn't mean spilling everything without thinking. It means sharing what's needed, when it's needed, with kindness woven into every word. Because when you love someone, you don't aim to shatter. You aim to illuminate. You speak truth like someone who wants to stay close, not someone looking for the exit. And you don't get points for being brutally honest if all you leave behind is silence and pain. That's not clarity. That's cruelty with a mask. Instead, be the kind of honest that opens a door, that says, I see something we can face together. That invites conversation, not shutdown. Truth, when spoken with softness, can transform. It can heal. It can deepen trust. So yes, be honest. But let your honesty be wrapped in love, in gentleness, in the deep knowing that words can both wound and water. Speak not just to be right, but to be real. And to be kind while doing so. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Gossip is a friendship killer. It begins quietly, a whisper over coffee, a casual observation laced with judgment. She always does that. I heard they're having problems. Just words, soft, subtle, almost harmless. But gossip doesn't stay small. It grows in the silence between sentences. It weaves into the trust between friends, like a crack beneath the surface waiting to split everything open. We tell ourselves it's just conversation, that we're venting, sharing, connecting. But gossip isn't connection, it's erosion. It eats at the roots of safety, not only for the one being spoken about, but for the one listening too. Because if you gossip to me, I know you'll gossip about me. And suddenly, our friendship isn't a sanctuary. It's a spotlight, always waiting to shine on my flaws once I step out of the room. Gossip breaks more than boundaries. It breaks intimacy. It breaks trust. It breaks the belief that our secrets, our soft moments, our stumbles are safe in someone's hands. The truth is, you don't need to be a part of every story. Not everything shared with you is meant to be passed on. Not every mistake deserves a stage. If you truly love someone, protect their name when they're not around. Speak words that heal, not harm. And when you're tempted to share, ask yourself, would I say this if they were sitting beside me? Because real friendship isn't built on shared whispers. It's built on loyalty in silence, on defending when it's inconvenient, on choosing to honor even when no one is watching. Let your words be a shelter. Let your friendship be a safe place. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Friends can be soulmates, too. We often reserve the word soulmate for romantic love, that lightning strike connection, that once-in-a-lifetime spark. But what if soulmates are not just the ones you kiss goodnight, but also the ones who see your truest self across a crowded room and smile like they've always known you? Because sometimes, a friend arrives like an echo you didn't realize you'd been calling out for. They understand your silences, finish your sentences, laugh at your pain, not in cruelty, but because they've lived it too and now it's finally safe to laugh. You don't need romance to experience soul-level connection. There are friends who hold space for your becoming with the tenderness of a lover and the loyalty of a sibling. The ones who show up not because they have to, but because they feel your sadness in their own chest. Who remind you who you are when you've forgotten. Who sit beside your grief without needing to fix it. Just there with presence as soft as prayer. These friendships are rare. Not because they're hard to find, but because the world teaches us to chase passion over peace, fire over foundation. But soulmates come in many forms. Some stay forever. Some just long enough to shift your orbit. All of them are mirrors, reminding you of the light you hold when the night feels long. So when you find a friend who feels like home, don't underestimate it. Honor it, water it, call it what it is. A soul meeting a soul and recognizing something ancient. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Check in without a reason. You don't always need a crisis to reach out. You don't need a birthday, an update, a milestone, or a headline. Sometimes the most powerful gift is a simple message. Hey, I was just thinking of you. Because in a world that moves too fast, where connections often drift until something forces them back together, there's something sacred about checking in just because you care. No agenda, no urgency, just presence. You never know what someone is holding quietly. The smile on their face might be shielding an ache. The silence in your chat might be the sound of them feeling forgotten. And sometimes your message, small, simple, human, can be the thread that pulls them back from loneliness. It doesn't take much. A quick, "How's your heart?" A "saw this and thought of you." A shared memory, a voice note, a meme, a moment. These gentle touches remind someone they exist in your mind even when life gets noisy. That they are not only loved when they are loud or successful or suffering, but always. We often wait until we have time. But connection doesn't require hours. It requires intention, a heartbeat of care in the middle of a chaotic day. So check in, not when it's expected, but when it's felt. Be the friend who remembers, the one who says, "I don't need a reason to love you. You are the reason." And in doing so, you become the kind of presence that makes the world feel a little less lonely. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Know when to let go. Some endings don't arrive with thunder. No loud betrayal, no final fight, no dramatic goodbye. Just a quiet shift. Two souls drifting apart like leaves on a still pond, no longer caught in the same current. Letting go doesn't always mean anger. Sometimes it simply means you've grown in different directions. That what once held you close now asks for space. And loving them means releasing the version of them you once knew. Friendships change. Some are meant for a season, a chapter, a lesson. And when that lesson is complete, holding on too tightly can turn love into weight. We often cling because we remember how good it used to be. We replay laughter, inside jokes, midnight talks, and we wonder, could we get back to that? But sometimes, trying to return means you never move forward. Knowing when to let go is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's the deep understanding that peace is found not in forcing what no longer fits, but in honoring what was while making space for what's next. It's allowing both of you to evolve without guilt, to thank the bond for all it gave, the comfort, the growth, the joy, and then walk away with an open heart. Letting go doesn't erase love. It redefines it. It says, I still care, but I no longer fit here. And that's okay. Some doors don't need to be slammed. They can close with grace. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Blood isn't a free pass. They say blood is thicker than water, but bonds built on love, respect, and safety run deeper than any shared DNA. Family is supposed to be where you're safest, but not all families feel that way. Sometimes, the people who raised you also hurt you. Sometimes the ones who share your name fail to share your compassion, your values, your boundaries. And in those moments, you might feel trapped, torn between duty and dignity. Between the voice that says, but they're family. And the quiet truth inside that whispers, yes, but they're also hurting me. Blood may connect you, but it does not excuse abuse. It does not give someone the right to dismiss your pain, to manipulate your silence, to cross your boundaries just because they've known you the longest. Love isn't measured by loyalty to dysfunction. And choosing distance isn't betrayal. It's self-respect. You can love your family and still say no more. You can carry the memories and still refuse to carry the weight. You can honor the past without being imprisoned by it. What matters most is not the family you were born into, but the one you choose. The people who see you, support you, heal with you. Sometimes, the most radical act of love is to protect your peace, even from those who gave you life. So if you've been waiting for permission to walk away from what's been hurting you, this is it. Because family isn't about blood. It's about care, and your well-being always comes first. Now let's move on to the next chapter. Set boundaries, even with family. You were taught to obey, to honor your elders, to be the good child, quiet, compliant, grateful. But somewhere along the way, you learned that love without limits can become a quiet form of harm. Because family, too, can overstep. They can expect too much, ask too often, assume that your time, your energy, your silence belong to them. But here's the gentle truth. You are not selfish for needing space. You are not disrespectful for saying, that doesn't work for me. Boundaries are not walls. They are bridges to healthier connection. They tell your loved ones how to love you well. They are not rejection. They are requests for safety. You can love someone and still say no. You can share blood and still require respect. A boundary says, I will not abandon myself to keep the peace. It says, I am worthy of kindness, even in close quarters. It says, I can be both loving and firm. Yes, it might cause tension. Yes, some may not understand. But clarity is a kindness, and your nervous system deserves relief from the patterns that made you shrink. Setting boundaries with family might be the hardest thing you'll do, but it is also the most freeing. Because in drawing the line, you teach yourself that you are not here to perform. You are here to live, to be whole, to be seen and respected, not just tolerated. And slowly, those who truly love you will meet you on the other side of that boundary. Not with resentment, but with a deeper kind of love. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Don't repeat what hurt you growing up. There are echoes in your voice that don't belong to you. Habits that feel familiar, but not right. Words that slip out in anger, that sound too much like the ones that once broke you. Childhood isn't just a memory. It's a blueprint. And if we're not careful, we build with the same crooked lines that once confined us. The silence you endured, the criticism you swallowed, the love that came with conditions, these things don't just disappear. They linger. And often, they resurface in how you treat others and how you treat yourself. But here's your power. Awareness. You can look your past in the eye and say, no more. You can notice the pattern and pause. You can choose a different tone, a softer reaction, a more conscious path. Just because you were taught to hide your feelings doesn't mean you must silence your child. Just because you were controlled doesn't mean you must control others. Just because you weren't heard doesn't mean you shouldn't learn to listen now. You are not doomed to replay what wounded you. You are allowed to rewrite it, to offer what you never received, to raise your voice with compassion, not fear, to touch others with tenderness, not shame. Healing doesn't always come from confrontation. Sometimes it comes from quiet revolutions. from the choice to end the cycle with love, not rage. So, if you ever wonder whether you're becoming what once broke you, pause. Breathe. Remember, you have the pen now. Write something softer. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Call, even when nothing's wrong. We often wait for a reason, a birthday, an emergency, a milestone that demands acknowledgement. But sometimes, the most meaningful call is the one made without cause. To hear a voice without urgency. To reconnect without a problem to fix. To say, I was just thinking of you, and mean it. Not because something happened, but because nothing did. And still, you mattered enough to reach out. In a world that rushes, pauses are precious. Moments of stillness, where conversation has no deadline, no agenda, just presence. Think of the times you've longed for someone to check in for no reason at all. The ache of quiet days, when the silence felt heavier than usual. The joy of an unexpected voice piercing through the numbness, saying, "Hi, how are you really?" When you make that call, you become that gift. You become the reminder that care doesn't always need a crisis. That love, in its gentlest form, often arrives unannounced. It doesn't have to be long. Just a few minutes of your time to say, "I'm here," without needing anything in return. No fixes, no advice. Just your voice as a bridge. These are the moments that keep relationships alive. Not the grand gestures, but the small consistencies. The ordinary touch that says, "I remember you exist outside of chaos, and I still choose to show up." So call, even when nothing's wrong, because sometimes that's when it matters most. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Your parents are people too. It's strange, isn't it? How the people who once carried you, fed you, taught you right from wrong, eventually reveal their cracks, their own wounds, their hidden fears. You grow up thinking they have all the answers, that they're the strong ones, the steady ones, the ones who always know what to do. But then, life starts to blur that illusion. You see the anger that wasn't always about you. You hear the sadness they never knew how to share. You recognize the coping mechanisms, disguised as discipline, the emotional distance rooted in their own unmet needs. And slowly, you realize something soft and seismic. Your parents are just people. People shaped by their own parents, their own pasts, their own limitations. It doesn't excuse the harm, it doesn't erase the mistakes. But it offers you a wider lens, one that lets you hold them in their full complexity. They loved you with what they had. Sometimes that love was flawed. Sometimes it wasn't enough. And still, maybe they tried. Maybe they didn't know how to love you in the way you needed, because no one ever showed them how. Seeing your parents as people doesn't mean abandoning your hurt. It means allowing room for both accountability and empathy. For forgiveness that isn't forgetting, but understanding. And maybe, as you grow into yourself, you begin to heal what they couldn't, to speak what they silenced, to love your own children a little more gently. Because in seeing them clearly, you also start to see just how far you've come. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Siblings are built-in best friends. They were there when your world was small, when home was everything, and the language of love was laughter echoing down hallways or shared silence during late-night whispers. A sibling, not just someone who shares your blood, but someone who shares your beginnings. You fought over small things, toys, turns, attention. You yelled, slammed doors, maybe didn't speak for days. And yet, they were always there, at the dinner table, in the car rides, in the background of your becoming. It's easy to forget, as life moves on, just how much of your foundation they occupy. how deeply woven their presence is into your sense of self. They are the keepers of your childhood, the witnesses to your growing pains, the only ones who truly know what it meant to live under the same roof with the same rules, the same dreams, the same family map. Even if you've grown apart, different paths, different values, there's still a thread, still a part of you that reaches for their name when memory knocks softly at your heart. Siblings can be your oldest allies, built-in best friends you didn't get to choose. But somehow, were chosen perfectly for you. They know your stories without explanation. They know the version of you before the world demanded perfection. So, if you're lucky enough to still have them around, reach out. Remind them of something funny, something sacred, something small. Because in a world that changes too fast, siblings are the gentle echo of who you've always been and who you'll always be. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. You can love family and still need space. Love doesn't always mean closeness. It doesn't always mean daily phone calls or constant updates or shared holidays under the same roof. Sometimes, love is the breath between visits, the silence that holds no resentment, the space that gives room for peace to bloom. You can love them deeply, truly, and still feel overwhelmed in their presence. You can honor the bond and still crave quiet. Still need time away to hear your own thoughts unfiltered by expectation. Because family can be warm and family can be heavy. Even those who mean well can press against your spirit in ways that feel suffocating. Even kind voices can echo with judgment if you haven't had space to grow. We are taught that distance means disconnection, that stepping back is selfish. But sometimes, stepping back is an act of love. Space can prevent resentment. It can protect your energy so that what you give is wholehearted, not hollowed out by obligation. Space can be the soil where boundaries grow strong roots, where selfhood isn't lost in the roles you once played. And no, you don't owe everyone access just because they share your name. You are allowed to protect your peace, to say, I love you, but I need a little distance to keep loving you well. The heart can hold both affection and the need for air, both closeness and autonomy. Because real love, the kind that lasts, doesn't just cling. It honors your whole self, even the part that needs to step away to breathe. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Respect generational differences. They grew up in a different world, one with different fears, different dreams, different definitions of success, love, and survival. The rules that shaped them were not written by choice, but by circumstance. War, scarcity, duty, tradition. These weren't just ideas. They were lifelines. They learned to endure before they learned to feel, to provide before they were ever told it was okay to rest. So when they question your choices or struggle to understand your healing, it's not always judgment. Sometimes it's simply confusion, a language barrier between past and present. You speak of boundaries, therapy, emotional intelligence. They hear rejection, distance, a challenge to all they sacrificed. But here's the gentle truth. You don't need them to fully understand to treat them with grace. You don't need to agree to offer respect. And respect doesn't mean silence. It means softness. It's possible to educate without shaming, to set boundaries without building walls, to say, this is who I am now, without making who they were a mistake. Generational gaps aren't trenches. They're bridges waiting to be walked. And every step taken with patience, with curiosity, with love, is a step toward healing the space between old wounds and new awareness. They might never say, I'm proud of you, the way you wish. They might never cry when you tell them your truth. But if they try, even a little, honor that effort. Meet it halfway. Because progress is often slow, and love, when layered with history, asks not for perfection, but presence. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Break toxic cycles gently. Some patterns run deep, passed down not just through stories, but through silence, through reactions, through the ways we learned to cope before we knew we were coping. Perhaps it was the anger that came without warning, or the love that was given only when earned. Maybe it was the way emotions were buried under duties, or how vulnerability was mistaken for weakness. Toxic cycles rarely start with you, but they often end with you. And that ending, it doesn't need to be a fire. It can be a soft unraveling, a quiet refusal to pass along what once hurt you. You can break the chain not by confrontation, but by transformation. By choosing a different tone when you speak, by pausing before reacting, by giving your own children what you once craved. It's tempting to carry resentment, to look back with anger and want justice. But sometimes, the real justice is living differently, loving differently, healing in a way they never got to. And no, you don't owe anyone a front row seat to your healing. Some people will resist your change, mistake your peace for defiance. But still, you get to choose what continues through you. Breaking cycles isn't loud. It's steady. It's found in the daily decisions. To listen longer, to shout less, to apologize faster, to soften more. You don't have to shame the past to honor your future. You can say, "This ends with me," not with bitterness, but with a kind of sacred stillness. A vow made in whispers. A legacy rewritten with love. Now let's move on to the next chapter. Learn to forgive, not forget. Forgiveness is not an erasure. It's not a blindfold you place over memory, pretending nothing happened. Pretending it didn't cut you where you still carry the scar. Number forgiveness is quieter than that. More personal, more sacred. It's the soft decision to stop drinking the poison of someone else's mistake. It's choosing your peace over your anger. Not because they deserve it, but because your heart does. You don't have to forget. In fact, forgetting can be dangerous. It can lead you back into the same fire, with hands still raw from the last burn. Memory is wisdom. It reminds you of your strength. It teaches you what to watch for, what to walk away from, what not to allow again. But forgiveness is freedom. It's the release of the grip that pain had on your spirit. It's saying, "I will not let this moment define me. I will grow beyond it." Sometimes you forgive with distance, with silence, with boundaries so firm they echo. Sometimes you forgive someone who never apologized, and still, you choose peace over punishment. To forgive is to reclaim power, not over them, but over the weight you no longer wish to carry. You remember, so you can learn. You forgive, so you can live. Not every chapter needs closure. Not every wound fades. But you can walk forward without dragging the past behind you like a chain. Forgive not to forget, but to be free. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Listen to understand, not reply. Most people hear just enough to prepare a response, not to understand. They gather words like ammunition, ready to fire back with logic, proof, rebuttal. But listening, true, deep listening, asks something more sacred from you. It asks for stillness. It asks for presence. It asks you to empty your hands, your pride, your preloaded opinions, so you can hold someone else's truth without squeezing it into your own framework. Listening to understand means stepping out of your own shoes and into theirs. Not to walk forever, but just long enough to feel the ache in their steps. To notice the blisters you never saw, the gravel they've been silently treading. It means pausing your need to correct, your desire to explain yourself, your itch to be right. Because often, people don't need solutions, they need space. To be seen, to be heard without judgment or interruption, to speak their confusion and not be fixed, but felt. It's tempting to jump in, to nod quickly, to say, "I get it," even when you haven't asked what it really is. But when you offer silence without absence, when you give them your full attention like it's a gift and not a burden, that's when something shifts. Walls begin to melt. Their tone softens. Yours does too. And suddenly, you're not adversaries. You're humans again, reaching across misunderstanding with hands open, not fists clenched. Listening isn't passive, it's powerful. It's how we unlearn assumptions and relearn empathy. It's how love breathes, not in the solving, but in the staying. So next time someone speaks, don't rush. Don't plan your next sentence. Just listen, not to reply, but to understand. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Tone changes. Everything words carry weight. But tone carries the soul behind them. It's not just what you say, but how you say it that lingers in a heart long after the conversation is over. A soft tone can turn conflict into connection. A harsh one can turn truth into a wound. You might speak the right words, offer the right advice, even say, "I love you" every day. But if your tone holds tension, judgment, or coldness, the message gets lost in the delivery. Tone is the emotional signature beneath language. It's your energy made audible. And sometimes, a whisper carries more love than a shout meant to save. You don't have to walk on eggshells, but you do have to care, to notice the way your words land, to ask yourself, am I speaking from love or from fear, from understanding or from pride? Tone can wrap a hard truth in gentleness. It can turn a disagreement into an invitation. It can soothe an anxious heart, calm a heated moment, and make someone feel less alone in their chaos. And here's the tender truth. Sometimes, the tone you use with others mirrors the tone you use with yourself. Critical, sharp, impatient. But when you soften inwardly, when you offer your own heart kindness, that shift echoes outward. You don't have to be perfect. Just present. Just aware. Tone is a choice, one that shapes the emotional landscape of every relationship you tend. Speak with care, because the way you say something can turn a moment into either a scar or a balm. Now let's move on to the next chapter. Silence can be an answer. There is a sacredness to silence, a presence within the absence, a language that speaks even when the mouth stays closed. We live in a world that fears the quiet, where silence is mistaken for distance, for avoidance, for lack of care. But sometimes silence is the highest form of respect. A gentle space held open when no words are enough or too many would wound. There are times when silence is a boundary, when walking away quietly says more than arguing ever could, when choosing not to respond is not an act of withdrawal, but of wisdom. Because not every situation deserves your energy, not every accusation needs a defense, and not every conversation must be won. Silence can also be a form of listening, not to others, but to yourself. To that quiet voice within that gets drowned out by explanations and noise. When you stop talking, you start hearing. Your intuition rises, unfiltered and honest. In the heat of conflict, silence becomes the pause that prevents regret. It becomes a bridge instead of a wall. The kind of silence that says, "I'm still here, but I won't hurt you with haste. I'm choosing peace, even when I'm full of storms." And sometimes, silence is love. Two people in the same room, saying nothing, yet feeling seen. A silence so full, it feels like a conversation between souls. You don't have to respond to everything. You don't have to fill the gaps. Let silence do its quiet work. Because in a world obsessed with noise, your calm refusal to react is its own kind of power. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Texts can't carry emotions. A message appears. A few words on a glowing screen. Clear, simple, short. But the tone, the intention, the feeling behind it, that part never arrives. Texting has become our lifeline, a thread between us and the ones we love, between us and the ones we barely know. Quick, convenient, efficient. But in the realm of emotions, efficiency often comes at the cost of depth. You write, "I'm fine." But are you? Or are you aching, hoping someone reads between the lines? You read, "Okay." But is it a sigh? A shrug? A storm about to break? A goodbye hiding in 2 syllables? Words without voice lose their heartbeat. There's no tremble, no breath, no hesitation to color the message, no furrowed brow, no nervous laughter, no tears in the corner of an eye. And so we assume. We fill in the blanks with our fears, our pasts, our wounds. A simple "sure" can spark anxiety when love feels uncertain. Texts can't carry nuance. They can't hold a trembling hand or lean into silence without sounding cold. Sometimes what we need can't be typed. It needs a voice, gentle, trembling, honest. It needs presence, not punctuation. So when something feels off, don't text back, call, or sit down face to face. Look into their eyes. Feel the rhythm of their breath. Because love, in its truest form, is felt, not just read. And no matter how many words you send through glass, nothing will ever replace the warmth of being fully heard. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Ask more than you assume. Assumptions are shadows. They creep in quietly, filling in the blanks with pieces from your past, your fears, your interpretations. You think you know what they meant. You think you understand why they pulled away, why they didn't respond, why their voice changed. And so you build a story, a whole world from fragments and guesses. But the truth? You don't know until you ask. We often protect ourselves by predicting disappointment. It feels safer to assume hurt than to risk hearing it spoken aloud. But assumptions don't shield you. They separate you. They wedge distance between hearts that only needed clarity, not conclusions. When you ask, you open a door. You say, "I care enough not to guess. I want to understand you, not the version of you I've built in my mind." Ask what they're feeling. Ask what they meant. Ask where it hurts. Ask what they need. Ask who they are today, not just who they were yesterday. And just as gently, let yourself be asked. Let them into the parts you keep guarded, the vulnerable spaces where your truth breathes. Questions create connection. They soften tension. They unravel assumptions before they harden into resentment. Remember, you are not a mind reader, and neither are they. Ask, even if your voice shakes. Ask, even if the answer scares you. Ask, because love is built not just on presence, but on curiosity. And in the asking, you offer a sacred gift, the chance to be seen for who someone really is, not who you fear they might be. Now let's move on to the next chapter. Eye contact builds trust. There's something ancient in the way our eyes meet. Before words, before gestures, before the touch of a hand. There was this, a gaze held quietly between two souls. Eye contact isn't just a social habit. It's a bridge, a truth detector, a window into the unseen. It says, I'm here. I'm with you. I see you, and I'm not looking away. In a world of constant distraction, true eye contact feels like an act of rebellion. It breaks through the digital blur, interrupts the scrolling, and invites presence. When someone looks you in the eyes and doesn't flinch, doesn't rush, doesn't glance at their phone, they're giving you a rare kind of gift. Undivided attention. A kind of respect that words can't replicate. In moments of love, a shared gaze can feel like home. In moments of conflict, it can soften the edges, turn accusations into understanding. And in moments of vulnerability, eye contact holds space without demanding explanation. It tells your nervous system, you're safe. You don't have to perform here. It's why we avoid it when we're ashamed, why we seek it when we're in love. It's the silent signal that trust is being built or broken. So the next time you speak, don't just talk. Look. Let your eyes hold what your words can't. Let your gaze be steady, soft, and open. Because in the quiet honesty of eye contact, 1,000 unspoken truths can finally breathe. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Speak when calm, not angry. There is a stillness that comes before wisdom, a soft breath that settles the storm before the words arrive. But anger moves fast. It races through the body, hot and loud, craving release. And in those heated moments, we often speak not to connect, but to defend, to wound, to win. You've felt it. The regret that comes after sharp words have been thrown like daggers. The silence that follows, not peaceful, but hollow. When anger speaks first, love tends to listen last. To speak when calm is not to silence your truth. It's to honor it. It's to wait until your truth is no longer shaking, no longer soaked in fear or wrapped in the urgency to hurt. Calm is not passivity. It is strength refined. It's the power to hold back until your voice carries healing instead of harm. Because the tone you choose writes the memory. They may forget your exact words, but they will never forget how those words made them feel. So breathe, not once, but until the fire quiets. Step outside. Place your hand on your heart. Listen to the space beneath the rage. There's always something softer there. A hurt, a need, a longing to be understood. Speak from that place. Let your voice rise from the calm center of who you are. That's where love survives conflict. That's where truth is heard. And if the moment feels too hot, walk away, not in silence, but in wisdom. I love you, and I want to say this well. Let me come back to it. That too is love speaking. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Tell me more is magic. It's such a simple phrase. Software curious, unassuming, and yet it opens doors inside the soul that may have never been unlocked before. Tell me more, not I already know, not here's what I think, but a gentle invitation to unfold, to unravel, to feel safe being seen. So many of us live our days unheard, spoken to, but not listened to, answered, but not asked, rushed through conversations like they're checklists, not connections. But when someone says, tell me more, something shifts. Walls lower, breath deepens. The heart begins to whisper truths it didn't know it was holding. Because finally, someone is not just waiting for their turn to speak. They're waiting for your heart to feel ready. It's not about fixing. It's not about solving. It's about being present with another human as they lay their truth in your hands. Tell me more is an act of love that says, I have time for this. I have space for you. I want to know the shape of your thoughts, the weight of your memories, the colors of your feelings. And sometimes, when someone can't find the words, that invitation alone is enough. It's a balm to the lonely, a mirror to the unseen, a gentle nudge that says, go on. I'm here. You matter. So try it. Say it softly. Say it often. And watch how hearts begin to open. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Timing changes reactions. The truth of a moment does not live in the words alone. It lives in the timing, the invisible rhythm between intention and reception. You may say all the right things, but if the other person's heart is closed, guarded, or distracted by pain, your words may still miss their mark, not because they weren't true, but because the moment wasn't ready to receive them. Timing is the emotional weather of a conversation. It determines whether your message falls gently like rain or hits like a sudden storm. You felt this, haven't you? That moment when you tried to express something deep, but the other person was distant, tired, triggered, or when someone brought up something important and you just couldn't hear it. Not because you didn't care, but because the timing was off. We are not always available to each other's truths, and that's okay. But wisdom lives in knowing when to pause, when to wait, when to gently ask, is now a good time? When you honor timing, you honor the space between hearts. You allow emotion to settle, defensiveness to soften, and listening to bloom. It's not about walking on eggshells, it's about dancing with awareness. Because what's said in haste may be misunderstood, but what's said in presence can change everything. So next time you feel the urge to dive into a difficult truth, pause, breathe, sense the moment. The right words at the wrong time can still leave scars, but the right words at the right time, they heal. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Say it so it can be heard. Communication is not about what you say. It's about what the other person feels when you say it. It's about whether your words can actually land in a heart that's ready, in a mind that's open, in a moment that's safe. To say something so it can be heard means stepping outside yourself, not abandoning your truth, but guiding it gently into the world of another person. Because your tone is louder than your sentence. Your energy speaks before your mouth opens. And your intention must walk with empathy if you want your message to cross the invisible bridge between two inner worlds. We often mistake being honest for being blunt, or being real for being careless. But truth without compassion isn't brave. It's harsh, and people don't remember every detail you say. They remember how safe they felt hearing it, whether your voice invited defensiveness or trust, whether your presence felt like a fight or a refuge. Saying it so it can be heard means slowing down, feeling into the moment, choosing words not just for accuracy, but for kindness, means asking yourself, do I want to be right, or do I want to be understood? And sometimes it means waiting until your tone matches your intention, until your heart is open to their response, not just your delivery. Because communication is never just about clarity. It's about care. It's about how we hold each other in the space between words. And when we speak with love, not just logic, we give our truths the wings they need to fly right into the places they're meant to land. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Heal together, not just alone. Healing is often painted as a solitary path, a quiet journey through shadowed forests of one's own wounds, a private search for wholeness. And yes, there is truth in that. We must turn inward. We must sit with the ache no one else can fully understand. We must find peace within the silence of our own skin. But healing does not have to be lonely. There is another kind of healing just as sacred. The kind that happens when two souls choose to grow in the presence of one another. Not perfectly, not without friction, but with gentleness, with mutual tending. To heal together means holding space for another's sorrow without needing to fix it. It means watching someone tremble under the weight of old pain and saying softly, "I'm not afraid of this. I'm here." It's allowing your own wounds to breathe in the company of a love that does not run when things get messy. It's the late-night talks where truths come out like trembling birds. The quiet mornings where silence feels safe. The arguments that don't end in walking away, but in circling back again and again until you find understanding. Healing together means recognizing that connection can be medicine, that safety, when offered with intention, becomes a salve for the soul. You were never meant to do it all alone. No one is. We're wired for co-regulation, for nervous systems that soothe each other, for love that says, even in your brokenness, you are not too much. So yes, tend to yourself. Grow your own roots. But remember, some healing only blooms in the warmth of shared light. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Be a mirror, not a judge. There's a kind of love that doesn't correct you. It reflects you, not to shame, but to help you see what you've forgotten about yourself. Your light, your patterns, your shadows, and your softness. To be a mirror means offering presence, not punishment. Compassion, not correction. It's the art of listening so deeply that the other person begins to hear their own truth more clearly through the stillness of your acceptance. You don't need to dissect their wounds. You don't need to prescribe their healing. You just need to hold the mirror, steadily, gently, lovingly, and let them see themselves in your calm. When we judge, we create distance. A wall goes up, defenses rise, the heart closes. But when we mirror, we create a bridge, a pathway for vulnerability, for soft growth, for deep trust. Mirroring is quiet work. It means asking instead of assuming, reflecting instead of reacting. It means choosing words that echo their experience, not override it. It's the difference between saying, "You shouldn't feel that way," and saying, "I can see that this really hurt." One dismisses, the other dignifies. And the magic is, when people feel seen, they often begin to heal on their own. Because sometimes, clarity isn't something you give them. It's something they find in your calm gaze, your steady voice, your open heart. So when the ones you love stumble, spiral, or shut down, don't rush to fix. Just hold the mirror. Let your presence reflect the truth of who they are. And trust that it's enough. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Your trauma isn't their fault. There are wounds inside you that were carved long before this relationship began. Echoes of moments when your trust was broken, your voice silenced, your love unmet. These memories live not just in your mind, but in your body, your nervous system, your automatic reactions. And sometimes, those old aches awaken in the presence of someone new. A raised voice can feel like danger, a delayed reply like abandonment. An honest mistake can ignite a wildfire of fear. But here's the quiet truth that lives beneath the storm. Your trauma is real, but your partner didn't cause it. And they don't deserve the punishment for a pain they never inflicted. It's not about blaming yourself. It's about claiming responsibility for your healing. About noticing when old ghosts are steering present-day choices. About saying, "I know this fear feels big, but I also know you're not the one who caused it. When you can name your triggers without projecting them, you give your partner the gift of understanding, and you give yourself the freedom to grow. Love is not about avoiding discomfort. It's about creating safety within it. Let your partner witness you, but don't make them carry you. Let them support, not save. Let them love the you of now, not drown in the echoes of then. Because your past may have shaped your patterns, but it does not have to define your future connection. Healing is your work. And in love, you don't walk it alone, but you do walk it awake. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Growth might mean growing apart. Not all endings are failures. Some are graduations, quiet evolutions of the soul that whisper, "You've both outgrown the shape you once fit so perfectly." We like to think that if love is real, it will last forever. But sometimes, the deepest love is the one that sets you free. Because growth, true growth, is not always synchronized. Two people can start a journey with hearts in rhythm, dreams aligned, timing perfect. But as they each blossom into deeper versions of themselves, their paths may begin to curve in opposite directions. This isn't betrayal. It's life. It's nature. Just as trees lean toward different angles of sun, so too do souls reach toward different lessons. And it hurts, yes. It's a soft kind of ache, like watching something beautiful fade in slow motion. But there is honor in recognizing when love has shifted from partnership to memory, from present to past, without needing to force it back into place. Growing apart doesn't mean the love was fake. It means it was alive. And like all living things, it changed. Let go without bitterness. Grieve, but also be grateful. Thank them for who you were when you were with them, for the mirror they held, the support they gave, the chapters they helped you write. Sometimes the most loving choice is not to stay, but to walk away with tenderness, leaving room for both hearts to keep becoming. Because not every soulmate is a forever stay. Some are just a sacred stop on the journey of your own becoming. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Teach, don't shame. No one enters a relationship already knowing everything. Not about love, not about communication, not about how to hold another's heart without dropping their own. We are all learning, all unlearning. Each of us carrying the weight of how we were raised, the wounds we never asked for, the patterns we absorbed without question. We walk into love half-built, half-healed, hoping to be understood before we even understand ourselves. And so when your partner fumbles, when they say the wrong thing or fall into old habits or miss what feels obvious to you, pause. Breathe. Choose to teach instead of shame. Teaching is love in action. It says, "Let me show you how I want to be loved," instead of, "You should already know." It holds space for mistakes without turning them into proof of failure. It assumes effort, not malice. Shaming, on the other hand, shuts down growth. It says, "You're not enough," instead of, "You're learning." It builds walls where bridges could have been. It makes love feel like a test you're always failing. To teach with love is to believe in their becoming. It's to guide with grace. To remember that someone once had to teach you too. So speak softly when correction is needed. Explain instead of accuse. Use moments of tension as invitations, not punishments. Because when someone feels safe to stumble without being shamed, they rise faster, they listen deeper, they love better. And in that safety, true intimacy blooms. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Be open to feedback. Feedback is not an attack. It's an invitation. to understand how your presence lands in someone else's world. It's a window into another's experience of you, and sometimes a mirror reflecting parts of yourself you've overlooked or resisted or forgotten to tend. It can be uncomfortable, yes. Hearing that you hurt someone, even unintentionally, can feel like your love is being questioned. But feedback isn't proof that you've failed. It's proof that someone believes you care enough to hear them. Being open to feedback requires a soft kind of strength, the kind that lets you breathe through defensiveness, that allows you to stay even when you want to shut down, that whispers, "You're still worthy, even if you miss the mark." It's easy to listen just to reply, harder to listen to truly receive. But in love, listening isn't just a skill, it's a gift. When your partner says, "This hurt me," don't rush to explain. Don't race to justify. Start with stillness. Start with, "Tell me more." Let them unravel the thread of their experience without you tugging it toward your own. This doesn't mean you have to agree with every word, but it does mean you honor their truth, even if it challenges your own. Feedback is how love refines itself. It's how we grow closer without losing ourselves. It's the bridge between intention and impact, between how we meant to show up and how we actually did. So keep your heart open, not just to love, but to the wisdom that love is always teaching, if you're willing to listen. Now let's move on to the next chapter. Choose evolving over ego. There comes a quiet moment in every deep relationship when love faces a choice. Do you protect your pride, or do you protect the bond? Ego says, "I have to be right." Evolution says, "I want to understand." Ego clings to the past, to old habits, old patterns, old narratives of who you are. But evolution is brave. It lets go of what no longer serves. It asks you to become someone who listens more than defends, who pauses more than reacts, who grows even when it's hard. When conflict arises, and it always does, your ego will want to armor up, to build a case, to blame, to win. But love isn't a courtroom. It's not about who argues best. It's about who's willing to stay soft in the face of friction. Evolving means asking, "What can I learn here?" Even when your voice is shaking, even when you're sure you've been wronged. Because sometimes it's not about who's at fault. It's about who's ready to step into something better. When you choose growth over ego, you give your relationship room to breathe. You allow mistakes to become medicine. You make love a place where change isn't feared, but welcomed. Let your ego rest. It doesn't need to guard you here. Let humility lead. Let curiosity guide. Let your becoming be more important than being right. Because in the end, real love doesn't demand perfection. Just the willingness to keep evolving side by side. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Encourage their dreams, not just yours. Love isn't just about what you build together. It's also about how you hold space for what your partner is building on their own. It's easy to cheer for dreams that align perfectly with your own path. Harder, sometimes, to support the ones that take them somewhere you don't fully understand. But that's the quiet courage of love, to believe in someone even when their vision isn't yours to carry. Their dreams may not always make sense to you. They might seem risky, or strange, or distant from what you imagine together. But inside, every person is a sacred longing, a fire they were born to tend. And when that longing is met with indifference or fear, it flickers. But when it's met with belief, it burns brighter. You don't need to understand the whole picture to be their encourager. You just need to be present, to say, "I see you trying. I see what this means to you." And I'm here, not to direct your path, but to walk beside you while you find it. Love isn't threatened by individual growth. It thrives in it. When both partners feel free to chase what lights them up, they bring that brightness back into the relationship. They return fuller, richer, more alive. So ask about their goals. Celebrate their small wins. Stand behind them when they doubt themselves. And let your love be the soft place where they are always believed in. Not because their dreams make your life easier, but because their becoming is a joy to witness. Now let's move on to the next chapter. Celebrate progress, not perfection. Perfection is a myth with a golden smile and a cruel edge. It whispers that love must look a certain way, always calm, always certain, always clean. But real love is messy and honest. It stumbles and learns. It forgets and then remembers again. It is not found in flawless moments, but in the ordinary progress of showing up a little better each day. Too often, we wait to celebrate until everything looks ideal, until the apology is perfect, until the timing is right, until the growth is complete. But love doesn't grow in waiting rooms. It grows in the small yeses, the "I'm trying," the "I caught myself this time," the "I know I used to react that way, but today I didn't." Progress is sacred. It's the quiet evidence that love is alive, that even when it hurts, we're still choosing each other, that even when we fall short, we're still reaching toward wholeness. When your partner makes an effort, even a small one, let it matter. Let it count. Say thank you. Say, "I noticed." Let them feel the warmth of your belief before they've arrived at the version of themselves they're working toward. Because none of us arrive fully formed. We are all becoming, softly, slowly. And when love sees progress and claps anyway, not because it's finished, but because it's honest, something deep within us heals. So drop the illusion of perfection. Trade it for presence. Trade it for kindness. Trade it for the radical act of celebrating each other as we rise, step by imperfect step. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Rest doesn't mean disconnection. In a world that glorifies constant doing, it's easy to mistake stillness for absence. But in love, rest is not withdrawal. It's renewal. It's the quiet exhale that lets us return to each other with more to give, not less. You don't have to be talking all the time to feel close. You don't have to be in motion to be moving together. Some of the most sacred intimacy is found in the pause, in the soft spaces where nothing needs to be said, because everything is understood. There will be seasons when one of you feels quiet, tired, distant, not out of disinterest, but from the weight of life. The world pulls in so many directions, and sometimes the heart just needs to retreat, to refuel, to come home to itself. Let your love make space for that. Don't rush in with fear. What's wrong? Why are you pulling away? Instead, ask softly, what do you need right now? And let the answer be nothing but stillness. Hold hands in silence. Share a room without filling it. Trust that connection can thrive even in quiet. That love doesn't dissolve when the words stop. It deepens. Rest is not a threat to your bond. It is the soil it grows from. It says, I trust us enough to not perform. I love you enough to let you breathe. So take your pauses. Give each other room. And remember, true intimacy is not just found in what you do together, but in how gently you hold the spaces between. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. A warm hug can heal. Before there were words, before there were promises and plans, there was the human need to be held. A warm hug, simple, quiet, but powerful beyond logic, can do what even the most thoughtful speech cannot. It bypasses the mind and speaks directly to the nervous system. It says, I'm here. You're safe. You're not alone. In the chaos of life, we often forget that love does not always need to be spoken. Sometimes it just needs to be felt. In the press of a chest against yours, in the wrap of familiar arms, in the stillness where hearts beat in imperfect sync, there is healing. A hug can soften anger without a single apology. It can end an argument without solving the problem. It can say, I miss you, or I forgive you, or even, I don't have the words, but I still love you. And not all hugs are the same. Some are quick, transactional. But the kind that heals lingers just a little longer, until something in you releases, until the armor starts to melt, until your breath remembers how to be slow again. Don't underestimate the power of holding and being held. Especially in a world so full of distractions, touch reminds us we are bodies, not just thoughts and worries. We are living beings that crave closeness. So when words fall short, let your arms speak. When your partner seems distant, reach for them gently, not to fix, but simply to remind them that love lives in the warmth between you. Sometimes, a hug is the entire answer. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Say thank you for the little things. Gratitude doesn't need grand gestures or big dramatic moments. Sometimes, it's the quiet appreciation of a cup of tea made just right, the dishes washed without being asked, a blanket pulled over you while you sleep. We expect love to come in fireworks and declarations, but most of the time, it comes in whispers, in the tiniest decisions to make your life easier, softer, more held. When you say, thank you, not out of habit, but from that real tender place, you breathe life into the love you share. You say, I see you. I don't take this for granted. I notice the way you care. And isn't that what we all want? To be noticed? To feel that our efforts, even the smallest ones, matter to someone. Love fades not from lack of passion, but from lack of acknowledgement. A relationship isn't nourished by the big events alone, but by the steady warmth of daily gratitude. So say thank you for making the bed, for texting to check in, for sitting through your worries, for remembering your favorite snack. Say it for the obvious things and the invisible ones. Let your partner know their kindness doesn't disappear into the background noise. Let your gratitude be a soft echo that returns their love back to them. Because in the end, a relationship is not built on perfection, but on presence. And thank you is one of the simplest ways to be present, to hold the everyday sacred. Now let's move on to the next chapter. Quiet moments can be deepest. There's a kind of love that doesn't need noise to be known. It doesn't demand constant conversation or dramatic proof. It simply exists in shared silence, in soft glances, in the breath that sinks without trying. We live in a world obsessed with speaking, with explaining, with filling every space. But in the quiet, we often find the truth we were too loud to hear. Think of the evenings where nothing is said, yet everything is felt. You sit beside each other, reading or simply being. No pressure, no performance, just presence. These are the moments when walls fall away. When you're no longer lovers trying to impress or fix or entertain, you are simply souls at peace beside one another. Not all connection needs dialogue. Not every feeling needs language. Some of the most intimate moments are the ones where you feel you don't have to be anything but yourself. In quiet, we remember the deeper layers. Why we chose them, why they feel like home, why just being near feels like medicine. So don't fear the hush. Don't rush to fill it. Let it stretch. Let it hold you. Let it become the backdrop to a kind of intimacy that is ancient, that is soul deep, that asks for nothing but your presence. Because sometimes the quietest moments are the loudest declarations of love. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Wake up and say something loving. The first words of the day carry quiet power. They shape the rhythm of morning. They set the tone for how hearts will open or close. In the space between sleep and waking, we are softest, still shedding the world's armor, still wrapped in dreams. It is here, in that sacred, sleepy stillness, that love can bloom most gently. To wake up and say something loving is not just habit. It's devotion, a whispered, "Good morning, love," a hand brushed across the back, a sleepy-eyed, "I'm glad you're here." It doesn't take much, just presence, just intention. Some people think romance lives in grand gestures, but it truly thrives in rituals like these. Daily, consistent, and offered with care. Because life gets loud fast. Phones light up, emails ding, schedules press in. And in that rush, it's easy to forget the person beside you is not just another task to manage, but your chosen companion. A morning kindness becomes an anchor. It reminds both of you. We are in this together. We start from love, even before coffee, even before the day begins. So whether it's a compliment, a thank you, a silly joke, or just the warmth in your tone, give it freely, even when you're tired, especially then. Because love isn't just kept alive in the milestones, but in the quiet mornings where your first instinct is tenderness. Start the day by pouring love into the silence. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Hold hands more often. 2 hands, 10 fingers, an ancient gesture so simple yet quietly profound. Holding hands isn't about romance alone. It's about safety, reassurance, connection that travels through skin like soft electricity. It says, "I'm here. I choose you. I'm walking with you, not ahead of you." In a world so full of noise, where love often becomes performance, this quiet act remains one of the purest forms of intimacy. No audience, no spotlight, just the soft intertwining of presence. Hands have memory. They carry the echo of all you've held, all you've let go of, and all you've reached for when you were scared. So when your hand finds theirs, in a grocery aisle, on a park bench, in bed before sleep, you're not just touching skin. You're saying, "I remember us." Still, over time, relationships can drift into the comfort of distance. Not coldness, just routine. But touch brings you back. Back to the pulse beneath the surface. Back to the warmth you built. Hold hands when you're walking. Hold hands during silence. Hold hands even when words are hard to find. Especially then, because in those palms is the story of everything you've survived, together. And when the world feels uncertain, when hearts feel heavy or tired, just reach out. No speech required, no solution needed, just one hand finding the other. Sometimes that's enough to remind you why you stayed. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Create rituals only. You two share. Every relationship has its own quiet language. The way you glance at each other across a crowded room. The way one of you always makes tea and the other folds the blanket just right. The shared playlists, the inside jokes, the made-up words only you two understand. These are more than habits. They are sacred rituals. Tiny, private ceremonies that make your bond feel like a world of its own. It could be something as small as saying good night in a silly voice, or lighting a candle every Sunday evening while you talk about your week. It could be watching the same movie every time one of you feels low, or dancing in the kitchen when no one's watching. These rituals don't need to be grand. In fact, the more ordinary, the better. Because love lives in repetition, in those predictable moments that create safety, comfort, and a sense of belonging. When the world feels chaotic, rituals become your anchor, your secret code, your home within a home. These shared patterns remind you, we are not just surviving life side by side, we are choosing to live it in rhythm, in softness, in shared wonder. Rituals aren't about performance. They're not for social media or even for memory's sake. They are about being present, right here, right now, in the everyday magic of being known. So create them, protect them, return to them like prayer. Because in a world full of fleeting moments, ritual is what keeps love from becoming forgettable. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Show affection in their love language. Love is not just about what we feel. It's about how we express it and how it's received. We often speak love in the dialect we were taught. But what if the one you love hears it in another language entirely? There are many ways love whispers its presence. Words of affirmation, soft praise that uplifts the soul, acts of service, a task done without being asked, just to lighten their day. Receiving gifts, not in grandeur, but in thoughtfulness. Quality time, undistracted moments where presence feels like the greatest gift. And physical touch, a hand on the back, a kiss on the forehead, a body held in stillness. But here's the truth. Your way of loving might not be the way they feel loved. You might speak in acts of service while they crave words that reassure. You might offer gifts when all they need is your full attention. Learning their love language isn't just romantic. It's compassionate. It's saying, I see you, not as I am, but as you are. It takes effort. It takes humility. But love deepens when we reach beyond convenience and meet someone where their heart listens best. You don't have to abandon your language. Just become fluent in theirs. Over time, you'll build a beautiful translation between two souls. A shared vocabulary that requires no dictionary, just devotion. Because true affection isn't measured by how much we give, but by how deeply it is felt by the one receiving it. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Share music, stories, books. There is a certain intimacy in sharing the art that moves you. A song that stirred something ancient inside you. A story that cracked you open in quiet places. A line from a book that stayed with you long after the final page. To share those pieces with someone is to say, this is a doorway to my soul. Would you like to step inside? Because we are made of stories. Not just the ones we live, but the ones we collect. The ones that find us. The ones we press between the pages of memory like wildflowers we never want to forget. When you send them a song, you're sending more than music. You're sharing a moment you want them to feel too. When you read them a passage, you're offering the thoughts you couldn't quite put into your own words. When you pass them a novel, you're letting them in on the worlds that shaped you without needing to explain every scar. These are small offerings, but they carry the weight of connection. Because when you read the same pages, or hum the same tune, or sit together in silence after watching something that moved you both, you're not just side by side. You're entangled in meaning. And sometimes, on days when words fall short, it's these shared pieces of art that remind you you're seen, you're understood, you're not alone. So keep sharing. Your playlists, your favorite poems, that book that changed you. It's not just about taste. It's about trust. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Sit in their world for a while. Sometimes, love is not about grand gestures. Sometimes, it's simply the willingness to leave your world and sit gently in theirs. We each carry invisible landscapes inside us. a swirl of dreams, worries, routines, and quiet corners that rarely see the light. To truly know someone means being curious about those inner spaces. Not just what they show, but what they feel. Not just where they go, but why. When you sit in their world, you put down your lens and pick up theirs. You watch the shows they love, even if they don't interest you. You listen to their rants about a stressful coworker, not because you know the story, but because you care about the storyteller. You walk their rhythm. You taste their silence. It's a gift. To witness someone without fixing, without comparing, without rushing them back to your comfort. Because sometimes they don't need advice. They just need you beside them. Fully present, fully quiet, fully there. And you'll find that when you visit their world, they'll open up more of it. The doors they once kept shut might ease open. And in those small invitations, trust blooms. We often ask others to join us, to see things our way. But love, deep and enduring love, asks this too. Will you come sit beside me? Not to change anything, but just to be with me as I am. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Laugh over nothing together. There's a kind of magic in the laughter that makes no sense. The kind that erupts over nothing at all, but somehow means everything. The world can be heavy. Schedules packed, bills due, unspoken tensions hanging in the air. But then, a glance, a silly face, a ridiculous inside joke that no one else would understand. And suddenly, your shoulders drop, your heart lifts, and you're both laughing, wild and breathless, at something so small yet so freeing. These are the moments that stitch joy into the fabric of your connection. Moments when the pressure disappears, when you're not lovers or friends or even problem solvers. Just two humans floating in shared silliness, like children in a pillow fort where time doesn't matter. Laughter doesn't need a reason. It needs presence. It needs permission. To be silly. To be light. To forget the adult world for a second and remember the warmth of play. And the best part? That same laugh over the same silly thing might come back tomorrow or next week. And every time it does, it whispers, we're still us. Underneath it all, we still have this. So cherish the nonsense, the giggle fits, the snorts, the happy tears. Because when the world gets too loud, it's that laughter, shared and senseless, that reminds you you're home. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Take breaks before you break down. There is wisdom in the pause. In the stillness between heartbeats, in the space between words, in the quiet decision to step away before everything collapses. We often push too far. We try to be everything, all at once. A partner, a friend, a peacemaker, a warrior for love. But even the strongest structures need rest. Even the gentlest hearts need room to breathe. Taking a break doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean the love is gone or the bond is weak. It means you respect the connection enough to protect it from exhaustion, to preserve it from resentment. A walk alone, a deep breath behind a closed door, a few hours of silence where nothing is asked and nothing is demanded. These are not escapes. They're offerings. A gift to yourself, a gift to the relationship. Because when you rest, you return softer, you return clearer, you return with more to give. We've been taught that love means staying, always staying. But sometimes the truest form of staying is knowing when to step back. So you don't say the words you'll later regret. So you don't harden where you meant to heal. Prevention is kindness. Pause is power. A relationship isn't measured by how long you can hold on tight, but how wisely you can loosen your grip when the moment calls for it. So take breaks before you break down. Let distance serve as a bridge, not a wall, and trust that love can stretch and still return whole. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Ask what they need, not what you think. It's easy to assume, to believe we already know. What they're feeling, what would help, what love should look like in that moment. But assumptions are often wrapped in ego. They center what we would want, not what they actually need. Love isn't mind reading. It's humble inquiry. It's pausing, even when you think you have the answer, and gently asking instead, what do you need right now? Because needs aren't universal. Comfort doesn't always look like hugs. Support doesn't always sound like advice. Sometimes what they need is silence. Sometimes it's distraction. Sometimes it's space to fall apart without being pieced back together right away. To ask is to show respect, to offer choice, to place their inner world above your assumptions about it. It says, I'm not here to rescue you, but to be present with you in the way that feels safest for you. And in that space, something sacred unfolds. Trust, relief, the kind of emotional safety that makes someone exhale for the first time in days. It's not always easy. You might hear answers that surprise you, that challenge how you love. But that's where growth lives, in the willingness to unlearn in order to understand. So before you reach in, reach out, not with fixes, but with openness. What do you need? It's such a simple question. And yet, in love, it's one of the most powerful ones you can ask. Now let's move on to the next chapter. Don't walk away. Angry anger burns hot, fast, fierce, and blinding. And when it rises, our first instinct is often to flee, to shut the door, to walk away, to let the silence do the talking. But anger, left alone, festers. It hardens into distance. It becomes a wall where there was once a doorway. In the heat of conflict, walking away can feel like power, like self-protection. But when it's done in rage, without care, without explanation, without the promise of return, it leaves a scar deeper than the argument itself. Don't walk away angry. Walk away when needed, yes, but with love in your voice, with a whisper of, I just need a moment, not the thunder of slammed doors. Because how you leave teaches them what they mean to you. Even in tension, even when you're hurting, especially then. It's not about staying in the fire. It's about how you exit it, with intention, with softness, with the unspoken vow, I'll be back, I'm still with you. This is hard, but you're not alone. Those words, or even just their essence, can change everything. They remind your partner that conflict doesn't mean abandonment, that storms don't mean the ship is sinking. So breathe through the anger, feel it fully, then choose to pause with grace, not punishment. Love isn't about never being mad. It's about what you do when you are. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Apologize with actions. Words are a beginning, but they are not enough. I'm sorry can be beautiful, soft, trembling, honest. But without change, it floats like smoke, fragile and disappearing. A true apology doesn't live in the mouth. It lives in the body, in the follow-through, in the daily choices that say louder than words ever could. I heard you. I see what I did. I will do better. To apologize with actions is to rebuild broken trust, brick by gentle brick. It means showing up differently. Not perfectly, but consciously. It's in the tone you soften, the habit you examine, the reaction you hold back because now you understand how it landed the last time. It's not just not repeating the harm. It's becoming someone who wouldn't choose that harm again. Love doesn't ask you to be flawless, but it does ask for effort, for humility, for the quiet courage to admit when you've hurt someone and the deeper courage to show them, day by day, that they matter more than your defenses. When apologies become a rhythm but not a remedy, they lose their meaning. They become lullabies for your own guilt instead of healing for someone else's pain. But when your apology is lived, not just said, when your hands, your choices, your patterns carry the weight of your regret, then healing becomes possible. Because love doesn't just want to hear, "I'm sorry." It wants to feel, "I've changed." Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Let go of winning. In love, there is no scoreboard, no gold medal for being right, no trophy for the last word. Because in every argument where someone wins, two hearts quietly lose something. The need to win comes from fear. Fear of being unseen, unheard, or worse, unloved. We fight not just for our point, but for proof that we matter, that our pain counts, that our voice can echo back from the heart of someone we trust. But love is not a courtroom. It's not a debate stage. It's not a war. It's a garden. Delicate, living, easily trampled when ego storms in with boots on. To let go of winning is not to surrender your truth. It's to choose connection over conquest, to value understanding over victory, to step back from the edge and say, "I care more about us than about proving I'm right." This doesn't mean you silence yourself. It means you speak from the desire to be known, not to dominate. You listen not to reload, but to understand. You respond with grace, not strategy. In love, resolution is the real win. Closeness is the prize. Softness in the aftermath of fire, that's what heals. So the next time conflict rises, ask yourself gently, do I want to win? Or do I want to stay close? Because keeping score may keep you distant. But letting go of the game brings you back to each other. And isn't that the point of all this? Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Come back to the table. Every relationship has moments when silence settles in like dust. When words feel too heavy and reaching out feels too far. Maybe anger kept you away, maybe fear, maybe exhaustion built a wall neither of you knew how to climb. But here's the quiet truth. Love survives not because conflict never happens, but because someone chooses to come back to the table. The table is symbolic. It's not just a place to sit and talk. It's where connection is rebuilt, where hearts inch forward, even when pride pulls back. To return to the table is to say, I still care. I'm still here. We may be bruised, but we're not broken. It's not about forcing a perfect conversation. It's about showing up before all the warmth disappears. About saying, I'm willing to listen, even if your voice trembles. I'm willing to try, even if you're not sure how. The longer you stay away, the colder love becomes. And sometimes, all it takes is one soul brave enough to pull out a chair and open their palms. To come back to the table is to leave the weapons behind, to let go of needing to be right and lean into being real. You don't need the perfect words. You just need to arrive with your heart on the table. Because when love feels lost, the way home is not always loud. Sometimes, it's just two people sitting in silence, willing to begin again. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Say, let's try again. Often, there is something quietly heroic about beginning again. Not just once, but over and over. In the same relationship, with the same person, even after hurt, even after silence, even after the unsaid things weigh heavy in the room. Let's try again, is a soft rebellion against giving up. It is a tender offering that says, I see our mess, and I still choose us. Because love isn't a single promise made on a sunny day. It's 1,000 small renewals in moments of tension, of doubt, of distance. It's the willingness to stumble forward hand in hand, even when your steps no longer match perfectly. Saying, let's try again, isn't about pretending nothing happened. It's about acknowledging that something did, and still choosing to reach instead of retreat. It's about courage, not in grand gestures, but in vulnerable moments. Reopening the conversation, softening your tone, laying your ego down long enough to see the person across from you as more than just their mistake. Love asks for repair again and again, not because it's broken, but because it's alive. And things that live, they bend, they bruise, but they also mend. So say it often. Say it gently. Say it when the air feels cold and you want to leave, but your heart still whispers stay. Let's try again. Those 3 words can be the thread that pulls a tired love back into the light. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Remind them what they mean to you. We forget sometimes that even the people we love most need to be reminded that they are cherished, that they matter, that they are more than just the roles they play or the routines they carry. In the quiet hum of daily life, affection can slip into assumption. Love, once spoken in abundance, becomes a whisper lost in noise. And slowly, unknowingly, hearts begin to wonder if they are still seen. That's why it matters so much to pause and say the words. Not just, I love you, but the deeper things, the things that say, I see you, I value you, you are not invisible here. Tell them what they bring into your life, how their laughter lightens your spirit, how their presence brings peace you didn't even know you needed. Remind them they are enough even on their worst days, even when they feel far from their best. Say it when it's quiet. Say it when it's stormy. Say it especially when they don't believe it themselves. These reminders become anchors in the uncertain tides of life. Because when someone knows they are deeply loved, they carry themselves differently. They breathe easier. They dare to soften. And love grows safest in the soil of steady affirmation. Not just felt, but spoken out loud. So don't wait for special occasions. Let every ordinary moment become an opening to remind them what they mean to you. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Don't rehash, rebuild. There's a moment in every relationship where you face the rubble. A misunderstanding, a mistake, a fracture. And suddenly, everything feels uncertain. The instinct, so often, is to go back and replay it all. Every word, every wound, every misstep lined up like broken glass on the floor of your connection. But rehashing rarely heals. It reopens. It rehearses pain, burns fresh what was already scarred. And in the act of reliving it all, you forget that you're standing in the present, not the past. To rebuild is different. Rebuilding asks not what went wrong, but what can we learn? Not who started it, but how can we move forward together? It's a choice. To pick up only the pieces that serve and leave behind the ones too jagged to carry. It's laying a new foundation, not made of perfect apologies, but of new understanding, new care, new commitment to gentleness. Rebuilding means creating space for who you're becoming, not who you were when it broke. It requires both of you to show up differently, not defensively, but intentionally. It means designing better ways to meet in the middle, stronger bridges, softer landings, and a shared promise not to weaponize the past, but to let it inform the kind of love you want now. Because what matters is not how well you can retell the storm, but how beautifully you choose to rebuild after the rain. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Be willing to start over together. There is a rare and quiet courage in choosing to begin again with someone you've already known. To look at the same face with new eyes. To hold the same hand with renewed tenderness. To love not who they were, but who they are still becoming. Starting over doesn't always mean walking away and finding new love. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is stay and choose to love each other differently. It means stripping away what no longer works. Old patterns, tired stories, wounds that were never fully named. It means admitting you didn't always get it right, that you lost each other, even while staying near. But more than that, it means you're willing to find each other again. To start over is to leave behind the assumption that just because it's been a certain way, it must stay that way. It's daring to believe in love's ability to evolve, to be rewritten, reimagined, reborn. It requires honesty, humility, a soft reaching across the old distance, and a mutual decision to no longer be enemies in the same home. Starting over together is not about forgetting the past. It's about releasing it and returning to one another not as who you were, but as who you now choose to be. And sometimes, that second love, the one built within the ruins of the first, is even stronger. Because this time, you both know what's at stake. And this time, you're choosing each other. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Love is a daily choice. Love is not a lightning strike. It's not the fireworks you see in films or the sudden rush of infatuation that sweeps you off your feet. No, real love is quieter than that. Gentler, more enduring. It's the steady decision to wake up each morning and choose them again. Even when the butterflies have stilled, even when the days feel routine, even when the magic has softened into quiet presence. Love is a verb, not just a feeling. It's in the way you listen, even when you're tired, the way you reach for their hand, even after an argument, the way you show up again and again, not because you have to, but because you want to. Some days, love is effortless. A sunrise kind of glow between two hearts in rhythm. But other days, it's a choice made in the shadows, when the world feels hard, and the distance between you feels wide. It's brushing past irritation to remember tenderness. It's choosing forgiveness over pride. It's speaking kindness when silence would be easier. Love isn't something you fall into once. It's something you stay inside, by returning to it every single day. It is built in daily acts of grace, patience, and presence. 1,000 small choices that echo one quiet vow. I choose you. Again today, again tomorrow, again, even when it's hard. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. You can't love someone out of their pain. There's a tenderness in wanting to heal someone, to wrap your love around their wounds like a blanket against the cold, to say, if I love you enough, maybe it will hurt less. But pain doesn't work like that. It lives in the body, in the breath, in memories that love cannot erase. You can sit beside them, hold their hand in the dark, and offer every bit of your light. But you cannot walk into their past and rewrite what hurt them. You cannot extract the sorrow they haven't chosen to release. There's beauty in empathy, but burden in martyrdom. When you begin to bleed from trying to bandage someone else's wounds, you must pause. Because their healing is not your responsibility. It's their journey. And sometimes they aren't ready to begin it. You can love them deeply without trying to rescue them. You can listen without fixing. support without saving. Love is not meant to be a rescue mission. It's meant to be a sanctuary, a place of rest, not repair. You can be the soft place they land, the calm in their storm, but the work of healing must come from within them. And if they won't face it, if they choose to sit in their pain rather than rise from it, you are allowed to step back, not out of cruelty, but out of self-preservation, out of the quiet knowing that your love is not a cure, and it was never meant to be. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Not everyone deserves access to you. You are a sacred place, a quiet garden of thoughts, a whole universe of feeling, a temple of memory and hope and healing. But not all who knock deserve to come in. Not everyone who wants your attention is entitled to your energy. Not everyone who calls you friend moves with care like one. And not everyone you've loved was meant to stay. You see, access is sacred, and what you allow into your life begins to shape your inner world. So ask yourself, do they speak with kindness? Do they honor your time, your dreams, your soft places? Or do they drain the light from your days, leaving only a shadow where joy used to bloom? It's not cruelty to protect your peace. It's wisdom. It's maturity. It's self-respect wrapped in quiet boundaries. You can still wish someone well without letting them back in. You can forgive them deeply and still close the door gently. You don't owe access to people who've only ever knocked things over once inside. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is retreat inward, to water your own roots, to build walls lined not with bitterness, but with intention. And in that space, you begin to see clearly. You are not cold for guarding your heart. You are careful. You are healing. You are learning that love is abundant. But access, that must be earned. Now let's move on to the next chapter. People show love differently. Love doesn't always speak your language. Some say it with words, soft-spoken affirmations, carefully chosen phrases. I'm proud of you. I'm here. I love you. Others say it with hands, folded laundry, fixed doors, a ride when you didn't ask, your favorite snack left quietly by your side. Some people love by showing up. Not in grand declarations, but in consistency. A quiet presence when the noise gets loud. A look that says more than 1,000 texts could. Love wears many costumes, and sometimes we miss it because it doesn't look the way we expected. We want roses, but they bring rainwater. We want poetry, but they bring peace. They may not say, "I love you" out loud, but they stay on the phone until you fall asleep. They may not hold your hand in public, but they keep a picture of you in their wallet. Understanding how people love is an act of grace, not just for them, but for yourself. Because when you begin to notice the many forms love takes, you stop measuring it with someone else's ruler. You start seeing the gesture behind the silence, the meaning behind the action. And just as you learn their love language, you teach them yours, not with resentment, but with gentle clarity. In the end, love is less about how it's expressed and more about how it's felt. Did you feel safe, seen, cherished? That's love too. Even if it sounds or looks or moves differently than you imagined. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. What you accept is what will continue. Every time you say nothing when something hurts, you teach the world how to treat you. Every moment you silence your instincts, turn away from the ache in your chest, smile to keep the peace, you send a quiet message. This is okay. But is it? Patterns don't change on their own. They are reinforced by what we tolerate, what we excuse, what we call love, when it's really just survival. There's a sacred power in your boundaries. They are not walls to push people away, but gates to guide who can enter and how. Because here's the truth. The behavior you allow becomes the rhythm of your relationships. And if you accept neglect, you'll keep receiving distance. If you accept cruelty wrapped in charm, you'll keep dancing with manipulation. Not because you deserve it, but because you didn't say, "No more." It's not about blame. It's about awakening to the reality that peace isn't passive. It is chosen again and again through every boundary you uphold, every hard conversation you lean into, every time you walk away when someone refuses to meet you with respect. This isn't about being harsh. It's about being honest with yourself, with others. The love you seek must begin with the standards you set. And the moment you start raising them, gently, firmly, fully, you stop being a passive recipient of someone else's patterns and become the quiet author of your own worth. So ask softly, not who they are, but what you're still accepting. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Time doesn't heal. Presence does. We often hear it whispered in comfort that time will take care of the pain, as if minutes and months are medicine, as if clocks can mend broken hearts. But time alone doesn't heal. It only passes. Days turn into weeks, seasons change their colors, and the world keeps spinning while your sorrow sits still. Healing doesn't come from waiting for the ache to fade. It comes from presence. From turning toward the wound, not away from it. From breathing with it, being gentle with it, asking it what it needs. It's presence that softens grief into wisdom. It's presence that teaches you how to hold sadness without letting it drown you. It's presence that wraps compassion around the jagged edges inside you. And it's not just your own presence. Sometimes, the right kind of company can be the balm. Someone who doesn't rush you, who doesn't try to fix you, who simply says, "I see it hurts. I'm here." That kind of presence is a sacred kind of medicine, quiet, steady, real. Healing lives in that space between awareness and acceptance. Not in forgetting, but in remembering differently. Not in erasing pain, but in giving it a soft place to land. So let go of the myth that time alone will mend your heart. It's what you do with that time that matters. It's how you sit with yourself in silence. It's who you allow near you in the storm. It's the slow, tender work of showing up for your own becoming. Because presence, not time, is what heals. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Closure isn't always a conversation. We long for the moment, that final meeting, that clear explanation, the open-hearted talk that ties every thread into a neat and gentle ending. But life is not a storybook. Not all goodbyes come with good reasons. Not every ending brings clarity. Sometimes, the apology never arrives. The answer stays unspoken. The chapter closes without punctuation, and still, you heal. Because closure is not always a conversation. It is, more often, an inward unfolding, a quiet decision to no longer carry what someone else refused to hold with care. It's the late-night whisper to yourself. They may never understand. They may never say sorry, but I am allowed to let go anyway. It's when you stop rehearsing what you'd say if they finally listened. It's when you realize you've already said it. To your pillow, to your journal, to the mirror. And maybe that was enough. Closure isn't something they give you. It's something you choose. A soft and powerful rebellion against the idea that peace must be earned through someone else's permission. It might look like deleting the messages you never sent, or walking a new route home, or breathing deeply when their memory visits and greeting it without anger. It might feel incomplete. And still, you are free. Because the door doesn't have to be slammed for it to be shut. Sometimes it just stays closed and you stop knocking. That's closure too. Now, let's move on to the next chapter. Let people go with grace. There will come a moment, quiet and aching, when you realize that holding on hurts more than letting go. Not because you don't love them, but because love, real love, must breathe freely. And sometimes, what you love is not what stays. We're taught to grip tight, to fight for people, to chase closure, to make it work. But what if grace is softer than grasping? What if letting go doesn't have to be a breaking, but a blessing? Letting someone go with grace means no longer needing to prove your worth. It means accepting that the story didn't end how you hoped, but that it still mattered. It means whispering thank you for the love that was, and goodbye to the version of you who clung. There's no shame in endings when you walk away with your softness intact. No need to burn bridges just to feel strong. Sometimes the highest form of strength is walking away without resentment in your heart. It's okay to cry, to miss them, to feel them echo in your routines. That's not weakness. That's love. Still stretching in the space they left behind. But grace. Grace is what lets that space become a garden, not a grave. Let them go. Not with bitterness, but with open hands. Not with anger, but with a quiet nod to the past. They came to teach you something, and now they've taught it. Grace doesn't mean it didn't hurt. It means you're choosing peace anyway. Now, let's move on to the final chapter. Peace over proving a point. There's a strange kind of hunger that lives inside the need to be right. A restless ache to be heard, to be understood, to have the last word like it's the last breath of something worth fighting for. But what if you didn't have to win? What if the truest victory was walking away with your calm intact? Peace is often quieter than pride will allow. It doesn't shout in arguments. It doesn't pound its fists on tables. It doesn't craft the perfect comeback to leave someone small. Peace simply knows. It knows who you are without needing validation. It knows your truth without needing to convince. It knows that sometimes being misunderstood is lighter than being in constant conflict. You'll feel it the moment you choose not to engage. Not because you've given up, but because you've grown. Because inner stillness feels better than outer victory. You'll see it when silence becomes strength, and walking away feels more powerful than standing your ground in a battlefield of egos. Proving a point might satisfy the mind, but peace feeds the soul. And in the end, what do you really want to carry? The weight of being right? Or the lightness of being well? Let your calm be the loudest thing in the room. Let your peace be the proof. Because peace doesn't need permission or applause or even agreement. It just needs you to choose it. Now let's move on to the last chapter. Let love be the calm, not the chaos. Love is not supposed to unravel you. It is not a storm to survive, nor a test to pass, nor a wound to reopen each night before sleep. Real love, the kind that lasts, doesn't live in the noise. It lives in the stillness. We've been taught to romanticize the fire, the messy, the unpredictable, the kind of love that leaves you breathless from crying or from trying to be enough. But love, true love, does not leave you in pieces. It gathers you. Love, at its highest form, is not found in chaos. It's found in the steady heartbeat of someone who listens, in the way they speak your name, like a sanctuary, in how they pause to understand, not react. It's found in moments of shared silence that say everything. In knowing that even when the world spins too fast, they will sit with you until the dizziness calms. It's not about grand gestures or loud declarations. It's about presence, about the peace of knowing you don't have to perform to be loved. Let love be the calm. Let it be the soft place to land, the quiet in your nervous system, the sigh of relief at the end of a long day. Because the right love won't ignite your anxiety. It will quiet it. It won't demand all of you at once. It will meet you gently, again and again. No more chasing the whirlwind. No more calling pain romantic. Let love be the calm, and watch your heart finally exhale. Now, dear listener, you've walked through 100 truths in the language of stillness. You've cradled wisdom in the quiet of your heart. Let these words echo not as noise, but as a lullaby. Sleep easy. You are deeply, peacefully, lovingly held. Good night.